hear from us shortly, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. And the one and only Titan from Texas. He was censored by Congress, but going to be saluted by us, Congressman Al Green. And we're going to be hearing from them. There has been those of us that have been feeling almost helpless in this administration and the fact that they had the majority of the Senate as well as the House. But there is always a plan that can counter their plans. And what we've seen is the coming together of attorney generals at a state level that could fight, tie up, and do things that would slow down, if not immediately stop, some of the things that are being done that are against the efforts of others and against the interests of our people, all people. We definitely need to understand how they do. Now again, attorney generals are not activists, but they can do active stuff. The reason we want to have this panel, and we're going to have attorney generals from 4 different states, which is unprecedented. The reason why he wanted me to see him walk across this floor. Let me see him. All right. You got it? You all right now? Me and you. I used to do that in church. They ignore me. I just walk across the floor. I know how you feel. They ignored me a long time. I just got them walk across the floor. Didn't matter who was talking. I just walk across the floor. One of the things, the reasons we wanted to have the panel is that we wanted there to be an understanding of the activist community and of what the attorney generals are doing, and an understanding from them of our goal is to get things done. Too many of us in the activist community just want to make noise and not progress. At the end of the day, noise is needed if it is strategic. But to make noise for noise sake doesn't mean anything. So we need to know what the bottom line is. I told the story at Hazel Duke's funeral, which is a true story, when there was a police shooting here of a young man in Queens, Sean Bell. And this young man had been shot at by police 51 times, killed. The family called us, as we've worked on many cases. Some of the families are here from all over, George Floyd's family and all of them here with us tonight, this morning. But anyway, we went, police, we protested, they were prosecuted, they were acquitted. We decided that we were going to protest the acquittal. So Matt, I said we're going to close the city down. And Reverend Richardson, our chairman, took Lincoln Memorial. No, he took the Tri-Bowl Bridge, which is now a Kennedy Bridge. Hazel Dukes took the Holland Tunnel. Someone else took Lincoln Tunnel. I took City Hall. And we all laid down, hundreds of us at each stop. Arrested us, brought us all down to Center Street, put us all in the bullpen, and we're waiting to see the judge, because you go in front of the judge, you give your desk appearance ticket, you go home. So we're sitting there waiting. It's going to take an hour or two, Congressman Bell, Congressman, and we start singing freedom songs, Congressman Green. And in the middle of singing the freedom song, Hazel looked at me and said, "Reverend," I said, "What?" She said, "Look over there." I said, "What?" She said, "Him." I said, "Yeah, that's our lawyer." She said, well, what are you doing in here? I said, well, you know, I made a speech down there where he was at us, and he got so caught up in the speech, he laid down with us. She said, well, if he in here with us, who's going to get us out of here? So my point is that we all got a role to play. We don't need the attorney generals leading us in civil disobedience. We need them to tell us what they can do. And a lot of our activity outside should be to empower what is right inside or to expose what is wrong inside. And that's why we're having this panel. I just wanted to put that in perspective. So let us recognize we have the Attorney General of Nevada of Nevada, Aaron Ford. And you know we have a large Las Vegas chapter. Yes, all of them are here. Yeah. You did? I did, yeah. Okay. And when I go to Las Vegas chapter, they do everything legal. I don't do nothing. That's right. That's smart. I just want you to know. We have from the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey, who's worked with us in many cases, Matt Platkin. And we have the Attorney General all the way from Colorado, Honorable Phil Weiser. Give him a hand. And we'll be joined by one other Attorney General momentarily. Let me start by saying, let me start with you, Attorney General Weiser. What is the concern that many of the state attorney generals have that have brought you all together to address and fight some of what is going on with the administration?
The concern is, I want to live in a democratic republic committed to freedom and equality for all, and it is on the line. We cannot be complacent in this moment in the face of a campaign that is about fear, intimidation, divisiveness, and hating. We have to be about equality, about justice, and about fairness, which means when they try to attack diversity, equity, and inclusion, we say that's because you want uniformity, you want inequity, and you want exclusion. And it's not okay to take down Jackie Robinson's picture from the Pentagon. And it's not okay to tell companies you want to make a special effort to recruit at historically black colleges. You can't do so. We have to stand for principles that this nation has been built on. We have had a long arc that we've had to fight for justice, to live up to a promissory note, as Dr. King put it, that everyone's created equal. That promissory note has yet to be fully cashed. We need to keep fighting for it. That's what the law says, and their misinformation campaign, their intimidation campaign cannot be allowed to be successful, which is why in Colorado, we put out our own legal opinion that we said diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, they're legal, they're just, they're the right way to run a business, and that's what we stand for in the state of Colorado.
Attorney General Platkin, New Jersey.
Well, first of all, Rev, thank you for having me. I want to thank all of NAN. There's some good Jersey contingent here today, so thank you. Yeah. I want to thank you all for what you do. We've been partners on so many efforts, as you know, to promote civil rights in our state, to promote accountability and just policing, and all the work that we do every day. And that work doesn't stop in the face of some serious, and Phil just laid it out, serious challenges from this administration. You know, I have to recognize we're here on April 4th, 57 years
today,
to the day of Dr. King's assassination. And every year I go back and I rewatch the speech he gave on April 3rd, and you remember what he said. He said, all we're asking America is to be true to what you said on paper. And at the end of the day, that's what our lawsuits are about. They're about saying the president has to be true to what that foundational document said, a document that, as Phil said, has never been fully fulfilled, but the promise of it is what we all swore an oath to uphold. And what it means, this conversation about rule of law, I think even for us, and I'm so proud of the work that my colleagues are doing across the country, can seem abstract. But it's not abstract to folks in our state who woke up one morning and weren't sure, based on an unlawful action taken by this president in a crazy, undefined war against his term DEI, told people who on Medicaid that they couldn't go to the doctor, told kids who were in Head Start that they had nowhere to go, told law enforcement officers that they were going to be fired, told veterans they weren't going to get the benefits that they received, told parents of kids with special needs that their kids were out of luck. That's what our lawsuits protected against. And when we say we stand for DEI, as Phil said, those are principles that are foundational to this country, that everyone gets treated equally, with dignity, with fairness, and that when we are inclusive, we are stronger and more effective as a business, as an organization, and ultimately as a society and as a nation. Those are not controversial ideas. And we think back, I'll close with this, when you think back to what Dr. King was in Memphis for, he was there to protest 1,300 sanitation workers who were being treated unfairly, people who literally clean the streets and were being treated like garbage. Several of us were in Minnesota a couple weeks ago. We heard from a veteran, served this country overseas, twice hit by an IED, who was fired by Elon Musk with a Post-it note on her laptop. So if we're going to live up to the words on the paper, we have to be better than that. And the role we play as attorneys general is to stand up when they do unlawful things that hurt you all, and that's what we've been doing.
Attorney General Aaron Ford.
Well, first off, thank you, Reverend, for including me, and thank you all for being here. It's always great to be with my colleagues. Phil and Matt, we put in work. We do a lot of work together. Democratic attorneys general stand up for the principle that we all should receive justice. Look, the first thing I did when I got into office was to introduce myself to my new colleagues. It was a tough race, crazy race, some lies had been said, some truths had been told, but I had to introduce myself to folks, and I said, we have a job to do, one job only. This is to your question of what drives us, what concerns us. And the job in my office, if you were to ask any of them, they would say, our job is justice. Period, point blank. Easy word to say, tough word to kind of implement, but nonetheless, our job is justice. And look, I mean, frankly, I got that motto from then Senator Kamala Harris. When I announced I was running for office, she told me that her job, I talked to her about her job when she was California Attorney General. She said, my job is in the title of our office, the California Department of Justice. And I said, wow, that's a great motto. My office is called the Office of Attorney General, so I couldn't use it, but I stole it anyway. And I said, our job is justice. But let me be clear where it really comes from for me. I grew up on this book. You might have heard this book, Reverend. It's called the Bible. And in this book, all throughout, it talks about the job. Right. It talks about the job. In Deuteronomy, it says, justice thou shalt pursue. That's what it says. And I believe that. And so when we talk about what concerns we have as attorneys general, Matt has touched on some of that, but because it's important that we have to remember what the book says. Micah, it tells you, ask a question and gives an answer. What does the Lord require of you? It says to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God, right? But we all know that acting justly is not so much happening these days. Certainly being kind isn't happening, right? It tells you further on in Isaiah, it says we're supposed to defend the oppressed. This is my job, Reverend. It says we're supposed to defend the oppressed. We're supposed to take up the cause of the fatherless. We're supposed to plead the case of the widow. You know what it says about immigrants? It says don't oppress the foreigner, right? This is what it says in Exodus. It says, because you yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, right? This is what it says. And so I take my marching orders and what we're fighting for, and what concerns me about the current administration is that justice is at stake, right? Everybody is under attack. And I read these scriptures to tell me that everybody deserves to be treated with dignity, with respect, and with equality. And so at the end of the day, I will continue as Attorney General, as long as I'm Attorney General, to stand up for everybody's rights. Everybody present in this country, note my words. I didn't say every citizen in this country. I didn't say every legal permanent resident in this country. I didn't say all persons. I said every person present in this country. That is a term of art. I didn't make it up. I asked the Supreme Court. They said every person in this country, if you're present here, you have constitutional rights. And I'm going to stand up for them. That's part of what we have to do.
I do not know the laws in Nevada, but in New York, you're not supposed to preach without an ordination.
Well.
But I won't turn you in yet. All three of you have addressed the assault by the White House on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. National Action Network and some other groups are addressing the private sector with it. But tell me, from a state level, with an executive order, because the president has given this as an executive order, not as a congressional, it's not law, but it's an executive order. How do you, as a state official, Attorney General Weiser, could protect the DEI people, or the rights of DEI for people, whether it be in private sector or government sector in the state of Colorado?
So I'm thinking now about Justice Thurgood Marshall, whose memory lives on as a blessing. And he had said, democracy cannot flourish among fear. Liberty cannot bloom among hate. And justice cannot take root among rage. America needs to get to work. What we are seeing now, I mentioned before, is a fear campaign, is a hating campaign. It is the opposite of justice and democracy. The states can be laboratories of justice and democracy, can be a fire break against this raging fire seeking to undermine the progress of civil rights. Let us make no mistake, these attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion are an effort to roll back civil rights progress that we've been making. We cannot let it be successful. So we're doing a few things in Colorado. First, I issued a legal opinion calling BS on this whole effort. This is not law. This is intimidation. Diversity efforts, recruiting at historically black colleges, affinity groups, making sure equal opportunities are available to all, making sure mentorship is available to all. That's not just legal, that's just the right and smart thing to do. We are doing that at our department loudly and proudly and saying, if you want to come sue us, we'll beat you in court.
Yeah.
And we're standing by our universities saying, do not be afraid in this moment. Fear is contagious, but you know what else is? Courage. And when you know in the fabric of your being and from Scripture that what you are doing is right, that what you are doing is remembering the stranger, because you were strangers in Egypt, making sure that all of us take care of all of us, because our nation's motto is E pluribus unum. Out of many, we are one. You are standing on firm ground, and we shall prevail.
So, Attorney General Platkin, if it is not law, the executive order can be challenged by people in the state if they are terminated, if their contracts are canceled? What is the legal steps to expose that what President Trump is doing is not law, but is in fact just an executive order that he's issuing that can be challenged?
That's right. So we've said a lot of times, presidents have broad powers, but they're not kings. When a president signs an executive order, it has to be based on some legal right that a president has. It has to either be in the Constitution or in a law. And what we've seen time and time again from this president is that he has done things, quote unquote, through executive orders that have fancy paper and look like they're legal actions that are completely baseless from a legal perspective. And what he's trying to do, as Phil said, is scare you and make you think he has more power than he does. And we've seen it work. Okay, you've seen some of the most powerful institutions, most powerful law firms in this city, businesses, nations come in and bend the knee to him like he is a king on the basis of orders that would never hold up in court. So what we can do, as Phil said, and as Aaron said, and as our colleagues have said, is we, in New Jersey, I'm the attorney for 9.5 million people, all of them. Each of my colleagues have the right to stand up in court on behalf of their residents. And we have done that. And by the way, we have been successful 100% of the time. And I'll give you a very real and very current example. Just last night, we went to court. You may have seen last week, the president signed the most anti-voting executive order, order that would disenfranchise the most Americans, signed by any president in modern American history last week, saying unless you have a passport, not even a driver's license, you can't vote. That if you cast your ballot by mail, we're not going to allow states to count it if it's received within the legal deadlines in their states. And if you don't adhere to my order, the president says, I'm going to take away all of your election funding, all of your Homeland Security funding, all of your law enforcement funding. It is laughably illegal. And we went to court. And we're going to prevail. But here's the concern I have. This should be 50 states in court. The Constitution gives the right to states to administer elections, not to the 23 states or the 20 states that sued. It's to the 50 states.
Yeah.
It didn't say you can gut education services in just the states that sued. It said in every state. And there have been attorneys general working with our partners in the advocacy community who have shown a lot of courage. And right now we're in a moment where courage is the most valuable currency. And we need your support in that effort.
Attorney General Ford.
Look, my colleagues have said it very well. DEI to me means definitely earned it. Look, I take it personal at some level. I'm a black man. I live in Las Vegas, but I'm from the South. I'm from Dallas, Texas. People want to say it's the Southwest. I say it's more like Alabama than Albuquerque. And I've had my fair and unfair experiences of being called a affirmative action baby or a DEI hire or whatever the case may be. Here's what I know. I know that if it weren't for affirmative action, I would have gotten into Texas A&M, but I couldn't have afforded to go. I got a scholarship that was specifically designated for black and brown kids.
1 minute. I want to join the panel. I told you shouldn't be preaching without a license in New York.
Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir.
So I snitched on you. Here comes the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James.
you.
So I want you to know that she's not late. I gave her the wrong time because both of us from Brooklyn and we know how to make an entrance, you know. We don't come in with everybody else. So I made sure I tricked into a dramatic entrance. But go ahead. We just want you to know you are in New York now.
I know. Yeah. Brooklyn in the house, right?
Yeah, Brooklyn!
It is absolutely great to be accompanied by Tish. And I'm glad I speak before she does, because she's going to tear the house down when she answers the question. But look, I mean, I will keep it short. The fact of the matter is, again, I was able to attend Texas A&M because I got a scholarship that was specifically designated for black and brown folks who couldn't afford to go to school. It was an affirmative action scholarship. I sat in those classes, one of a handful of black folks, and called all the time an affirmative action kid who took somebody's spot, right? They dropped out. I graduated. And I've gone on, this isn't a bragging line or an applause line, but I've gone on to receive not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 degrees, including my law degree and my PhD. And I say that again, not as a bragging line, but as an indication of what happens when opportunities are provided to folks who qualify for them. And we're on the backside of this, right? And not only did it help my generation, it's helped the next generation. My son is now a medical doctor, right? Because his dad had the opportunity to take advantage of opportunities given to him. And so, look, when I look at these attacks on diversity, I say like my colleague Phil has said, the opposite of diversity is conformity, right? And they want you to conform. Y'all remember that? They want you to conform. They want you to act a certain way, get in line, stay in your place. They want you to conform, right? I'm opposed to that. When they talk about the opposite of equity, it's inequity. You know what that means. You work hard, but you don't get you don't get the same thing everybody else gets for the same work that they've done, right? And then they talk about the opposite of inclusion is exclusion, and we've all been excluded before. So at the end of the day, we're going to continue to stand up. That's not to say that we're oblivious to the fact that people are afraid. Some people do get scared. They do, Reverend, and they I don't want to use the word kowtow, but they do acquiesce to the concerns that they have by standing up to this administration. But those who do not, we should support, right? So whether it's Costco, I know you like Costco, whether it's Delta, whether it's the Cleveland Cavaliers, I know I'm in the wrong city for that, but the point I'm making is these places that adamantly and continue to support diversity, equity, and inclusion, we should support because they support us. And so keep that in mind as you move forward as well.
Attorney General of New Jersey Platkin mentioned today is the 57th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. He was killed about 6 o'clock this evening, 57 years ago, and I didn't know him. I only saw him twice at my church, but I'm very close with his wife, and as you know, his son is part of what we do, been here with us this week. But I was mentored by one of his staff members, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was usually here at the convention, but because of Parkinson's, he's not here. But I want to acknowledge, I grew up with his family, and my children go there every Christmas, and in fact, we went past Christmas. I want to acknowledge my fellow disciple. Stand up, Jesse Jackson Jr. is in the house. And we're going to have Jesse speak somewhat, but he's doing his radio show from here, but he wanted to be here with us, and he is representing the family, and I wanted to acknowledge him. I don't have to give an introduction, just step back. I can sit down now. Attorney General, State of New York, Tish James.
Oh, thank you. One, let me apologize for being late. Reverend Sharpton, back in Brooklyn this morning, as you know, we have our African American and clergy meeting first Friday of every month. And today was the meeting, and Congressmember Jeffries was there, and I was there, and the police commissioner was there, and the police commissioner wanted me to be there because we've been having a couple of issues. And so that's why I apologize for being late. I had to introduce her. I had to ask her some serious questions. We've had a reduction in crime throughout the city of New York, but gun violence is still a problem, particularly amongst young people. And obviously, just providing additional police is not the answer. What we need to do is provide them with opportunities, and more than just equal justice, access to opportunities. And so it's important that I be there, because all of the roller skating rings that we had back in the day, all of the places that we went to, all of the gyms, boxing gyms, they're all closed. And they've been replaced with not affordable housing, but luxury housing that most low and moderate income individuals cannot afford. And it's as a result of displacement. And so I apologize for being late, but I had to deal with that issue back in Brooklyn. And it's an organization that Reverend Sharpton was very much involved in, and I believe that he started it with Reverend Daughtry, who I respect and I love. And so, again, I apologize. Listen, 57 years after the assassination of Dr. King, and Dr. King talked about that stone of hope. And it's that stone of hope that gives me a fire in my belly each and every morning. It's that stone of hope that allows me to wake up and to stand to Donald Trump and to say, Donald Trump, I'm not afraid of you. It's that stone of hope. It's that stone of hope that gives me power. That's that stone of hope and the belief in each and every one of you to let you know that I'm not going to allow my ancestors, all of those who died for me, to be in this position. I am not going to disgrace them and disappoint them. I am going to use the law both as a sword and as a shield and challenge Donald Trump. And each and every time he issues an illegal executive order, I am going to stand up to him, because he represents to me sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And so DEI, as far as I am concerned, is more than about just black people. Let's be honest.
That's right.
DEI is about paid parental leave. DEI is about disabled children. DEI includes a number of categories. So when they talk about DEI, let them know that they're not only coming after us, but they're coming after all of us. And we've got to stand together, stand in community, stand with this great organization under the leadership of our civil rights leader, Reverend Al Sharpton, who has been a bright and shining light in the darkness. But I don't know about you. It's that stone of hope that inspires me each and every day. And listen, faith and fear can never share the same space. And so I'm covered by the blood. And I'm not afraid of Donald Trump. You can come after me, but no enemy, nothing formed against me will perish. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me.
All right, all right. Again, I'll stay close.
And you thought you could preach, huh? Attorney General Weiser, when Donald Trump and you and Matt Platkin and certainly Aaron Ford and then now Tish James have said these executive orders are illegal, but they are being enforced by some. So we have activists with our chapters from all over the country, some from your state, Colorado here. We have a Denver chapter, a lot of New Jersey here, and our Las Vegas chapter is one of the biggest. What happens if you work at a federal job or have a federal contract and the people there want to enforce the executive order of the president, which we've said is illegal? What should we be telling people to do if they are subjected to one of these executive orders? What instructions should the leaders in the community go back and tell people?
You should tell them that the whole world is a narrow bridge, and the important thing is not to be afraid. You should tell them they're not alone, because if they've got one of these AGs who's got their back, will be with you as you stand for justice and stand on principle. And part of what's hard in this moment is finding that courage, that stone of courage to stand on. Because those who stand for principle right now, it will be remembered in the future who stood for principle. It will be remembered who didn't have the courage to stand up for what is right and what is good in this world. And I know it is hard when people are threatening your jobs and your contracts. But you know what's harder? Is losing your integrity and your reputation. And so what we need to make sure we do is continue to go to court to defend the law. And Matt Platkin talked about the rule of law, which is a concept that to many can seem removed. But you know what the opposite of the rule of law is? Intimidation and whim and chaos. And I know which one I want. I want to live under the rule of law, which is predicated on freedom, equality, and fairness for all. So people can live without fear. People can live knowing that they will be treated in a fair way. The only way we get the rule of law is to fight these executive orders in court. I've done it 10 times. We've won in every single case because we're right.
So living under the rule of law, Attorney General Platkin, person A comes to one of our chapter leaders or comes to us in New York at the House of Justice. I'm being fired. My contract's being canceled because of DEI. Do they functionally, I'm talking just as a function, because everybody here leading a chapter or has a radio show or something, do we tell them to contact the Attorney Generals, or what are the practical steps we tell them to do?
Well, first of all, Rev, I want you to be a witness that people cheered for Jersey before Tish got here, too. So, yeah. Well, if you're in New York, you're in good hands. And if you're a federal employee and you got fired in the state of New York, you're protected because you have Tish James as your Attorney General. And we went to court, and guess what? We have injunctions in place today that say that what this administration has done in most cases is illegal if they're firing you. So you're protected. So you should tell us if you live in one of our states or in a state that was on that suit, if you're in Colorado or New Jersey or Nevada or the 19 other states not present here, you should tell us, because what we have done, look, this administration has shown more hostility to the men and women of the judiciary and threatened them than any administration in modern American history. And the judges have shown across the ideological spectrum, including judges, by the way, appointed by President Donald Trump, have shown courage in standing up for your rights. So tell us, because we will go back to court and hold them accountable if they violate our orders. Now, a lot of you live in states that don't have one of us as attorneys general. And you should ask your leaders, why is it that you want our universities closed because the president who holds a Black History Month in his office wants to punish us for doing the same thing on our campus? That's a fact. Why do you want our Title I funding yanked, which goes to fund low-income schools across our nation, not just in states with attorneys general like us, but in all 50 states? And so there should be accountability for people who don't stand up for you all. And you all can bring suits on your own and work with outside organizations that are doing it, but those of us who live in our states, I assure you we are going to keep fighting and standing up for you. So if you're being harmed, tell us. And if you don't live in one of our states, I would be asking a very simple question. Why are you not standing up for me?
That's right.
And let me say this as a word of caution. This organization is 34 years old, so I know the ups and downs of activism. Make sure if you take someone to an AG's office, if you're in the state that AG is in line with their thinking, that it's a legitimate claim. everybody that claims to be a victim, make sure they are a victim. Because a contractor came to the Uptown office and said they had canceled him because of DEI. And it was a $500,000 contract that he never did the job. And we found out it was not DEI, it was DUI. So I want you to be very careful that you do some kind of looking into who you represent, because I've been caught out in that myself, where you get halfway down the road and find out your victim ain't your victim. I figure I'd say that rather than them having to say it.
Oh my goodness, preacher and a comedian. I love it. That's great. That's great. You don't need a license to be a comedian, I guess.
Oh,
Right?
just got to be funny, that's all.
Right. That's gotta be funny. Just gotta be funny. Listen, not much more to say than what my two colleagues have said, but I do want to reiterate something, and that is, Tisha said something that was said about 3 days ago with another one of my colleagues. The California colleague, Rob Bonta, and Tish have both said it in their own words, and that is, they are not, and nor are we, by the way, we as other attorneys general, but some states are smaller than others. Mine is a small one. We got 3 million people. We have 400 people in my office, a little less than half are lawyers. We just can't do everything, right? And we depend heavily on Tish James and her fervor and that stone she's talking about. And we depend on other states like New Jersey and Colorado and California. And what Rob said last week was he is not ready to accede that any unlawful action cannot be challenged. In other words, he's going to fight every single time Trump does something wrong. That's what he said. He has the resources to do it. And that resonated with me in the sense that we want to do that. We want to be able to stand up every single time an illegal executive order comes down, we're going to sue. And I know between Tish and Rob and some others, we can work as coalitions to get that thing done. And we can represent the folks in our states. But there's a point I want to make, and I'm going to give it to Tish. We have been successful at protecting the entirety of the country on some of these things. We get what's called nationwide injunctions, where even if you are not a party to the lawsuit that we have filed, you still get the protection that the order allows for. As you probably know, there's a lot of conversation around whether these quote-unquote nationwide injunctions should be allowed, whether a district court should be able to do it. And what that would mean is just what Placken just said. If your AG isn't suing with us, you don't get the protection of the win from this lawsuit. And that's a very important thing you need to take home to him and say, like Matt said, if they are not suing on your behalf to get your job back because you were a federal employee who was wrongly terminated, when we win in court as Democratic AGs, you don't get your job back. I want you to understand that. And it's important that you go talk to your folks and explain to them the reason why you're going to hold them accountable at the next election cycle if they don't start standing up for you. Because that's one of the things they can do. They can sit back and toe the roll for Mr. Trump and not do anything, and then get the benefit of the work product of Democrats. All right? And we need to be certain that we hold them accountable for that. So I wanted to mention that aloud to reiterate it because it's a very important fact. And if, in fact, Mr. Trump gets his way and no nationwide injunctions can enter, that becomes all the more reason why you have to hold your own AG accountable.
Let me say this as we go to our New York State Attorney General James. We're joined by, he said he couldn't come, but he wanted to come later because he's committed to this, and many of you in Connecticut, Reverend Kimber and others, know the Attorney General broke speed records to make sure he's here to be part of this. So bring on the Attorney General for the state of Connecticut, William Tong. All right, Attorney General James.
Before we turn it over to my other brother, A.G. Tong from Connecticut, let me just say the following, a couple of things. One, we prepared in anticipation of Donald Trump winning this election. The outcome was not what we expected, but we were prepared. We prepared 8 months prior to his election. We looked at Project 2025. We looked at jurisdiction. We looked at venue. We looked at a wide range of issues, which is why when he filed his first executive order, in regards to birthright citizenship, we responded within 48 hours. We have responded to each and every executive order. And these executive orders are guided missiles. Guided missiles at each and every one of us. And I want all of you to know, yes, New York and California, we are the bookends. But all of the other states in between assist us. I am blessed to have, because of all of you and because of your tax dollars in the state of New York, we have 1,700 employees, 700 lawyers. And I've asked the state legislature, as they're in Albany right now negotiating a budget, I need more money because I need more lawyers. And they've agreed to provide me with additional resources. So we have sued birthright citizenship. We've got a preliminary injunction. Elon Musk, we've sued him in Doge. We were successful. We have sued in regards to the Office of Management and Budget when they froze funds in FEMA. We were successful. We sued on probationary employees, all those probationary employees who were terminated. We won. We sued on NHI, National Health Institute. We were successful in getting a preliminary injunction. We sued on the dismantling of the Department of Education. We were successful. We got a TRO. We were successful in regards to the education grants. I can go on and on and on. The point is that we are winning. We're winning, which is why he wants to impeach federal judges and why he wants to put some sort of constraint on our ability to get nationwide injunctions as opposed to injunctions relative to our individual states. In addition to that, and as Reverend Sharpton knows, we've got to stand up against the SAVE Act. And that's a dangerous piece of legislation which would require everyone to prove proof of citizenship. Right. It is a voter suppression piece of legislation, and it's important that we raise our voices. In addition to that, in DOJ, when they want to dismantle constitutional policing, we've got to rise up and say no to that. We've got to stand together in community and address these issues, but we cannot be afraid, and all of us must work together. You've got a responsibility, we've got a responsibility to raise our voices and to let individuals know. And tomorrow, all across this nation, I expect all of you to get out there and protest and protest and protest.
Attorney General Tong, give us, we've covered why the Attorney Generals of each state are challenging and can challenge the illegal presidential executive orders around DEI. And we've also talked about the practical things state activists from around the country can do if a legitimate DEI complaint comes to them in terms of bringing it to the Attorney General. Address what your position is in Connecticut, what your experience is, and what you fear in terms of federal oversight or attempted oversight to try and implement things that you feel clearly violate the rights of the citizens of your state.
Well, thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for having me here this morning. I was very excited to tell the Reverend Dr. Boise Kimber that I would be here this morning.
Yeah, he's here.
You know, you heard Tish James. I'm ready to get on the streets right now after hearing Tish, right? And that's what we got to do. That's what we got to do, not just tomorrow, but every day. People ask me, what can we do? You can get in the streets. And you can tell, we got to tell our stories. This is the thing about DEI. That battle has been won. What do I mean by that? We have won that battle over hundreds of years of fighting for each other in our communities. America is not suddenly going to become less diverse. Look at us. Look at us. I'm saying tri-state. You got a Jewish kid from New Jersey. You got a black woman, right, in New York, and a Chinese kid in Connecticut. We are not going back. Is anybody going back?
No!
So get out and tell our stories. Here's the thing about birthright citizenship.
Tell it.
We have got to make it real for people and tell people why it matters. It matters to me because when I was born 51 years ago in Hartford, Connecticut, my parents were not yet citizens. When I was born, I became an American citizen, the first in my family by right of my birth on American soil. And you know why? You know why that happened? Because black Americans fought for that right. Black Americans fought for that right because Dred Scott said we were not people, right? Dred Scott said we were not human beings. The Supreme Court said that, and after the Civil War, we attempted and tried very hard to right that wrong with the 14th Amendment. That's why the 14th Amendment says if you are born on American soil, you are an American citizen, period, full stop. So get out there. I think sometimes there's a temptation to make this about other people, right? That sometimes you think that they're immigrants from other places and they don't look like us and maybe we don't share the experience that we have. Well, look at the Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. Those are our people. So tomorrow and every day after, get out there and tell our stories and show the American people why this is an attack on all of us, and fight.
Welcome, Tom. Yeah.
There is, and I don't want us to end this without addressing this, there is some political, Dominique, come stand behind me, she thinks she's in charge. You know? There is some, and I want to bring up who's going to take us through the next session, because I'm going to have to start the minister's luncheon and come back. Talking about attorney, she is our, not only attorney, she's our everything, the senior person on our board. She is the vice chairman of the National Board of National Action Network and the CEO of Protestant Welfare Agencies in New York, for you that don't know, Jennifer Jones Austin. Come on. And Jennifer's daddy, Dr. William Jones, is who brought me into the civil rights movement when I was 12 or 13, and now I've been in it long enough to where his daughter is our vice chairman. And she has, since being vice chairman, she has put a real tone on us. And she makes sure everything is right. Because with Trump coming in, you don't know where he's going. But I'm confident she keeps us right. Dominique calls her and says, should he do this? And they tell me, no, I don't even know why. Well, I can't walk across the street. The light is red, Rev. Just wait. So the political risk of what you guys are doing, Attorney General wise, is important that we point out. We are 501c3. We cannot and do not endorse candidates. So I don't tell people that, like in New York, we had all the candidates here yesterday. We didn't endorse anybody. I just told everybody that Adrienne Adams was a member of the organization, but I did not endorse her.
Yes.
And she pays her dues as a member. But I didn't endorse her. So, Jenny, you can't say nothing. Now, what can activists do around policy? Because a lot of us feel we can't say anything. And to endorse policy and advocate for policy, since we are 501c4 nationwide, is not going against the line, even if you're in a Republican state. Explain that.
So this is an important point, and Brother Tong over there mentioned it. Everyone here can use your voice. They want you to be silent. They want you to be afraid. We can't. We can't stop showing up, joining arms with others who show up, and call out those who don't show up.
Right.
Because this is an important point made by Matt Platkin. It pains me every day that in states across this nation, the rule of law is not being enforced, because there might not be an attorney general, to take a few states like Pennsylvania or Ohio or Indiana, where they're standing up for people and the rule of law, which means our freedoms are on the line based on who shows up, who uses their voice, who gets engaged. I often say our democracy is a team sport. It is not a spectator sport. Get off your phones. Show up. Make sure people vote. Use your voice. And finally, I want to acknowledge my colleagues, because how you show up matters. Show up as your best authentic self, with love in your heart and kindness for all.
Since I think this might be my last time speaking, I just want to say this is not my first time at this conference, but it is my first time without Michael Hardy being here, and I want to pay my respects to him. He was a great man and a great leader of this organization. Look, I'm the only not elected Attorney General up here, so I'm going to defer to my colleagues who know far more about the political process than I do, but here's one thing I'll say. I mentioned courage is the most valuable currency right now. And I have the privilege of working with Phil Weiser and Aaron Ford and Tish James and William Tong and our colleagues, and we talk all the time. And I will tell you one thing I haven't heard now for several years, but particularly over the last year as we were thinking about how this might play out. As Tish said, you don't file a lawsuit on 12 hours notice by accident. It's because you take seriously what this president has said. Generally, what he said is what he's done. You take it seriously. I haven't heard one time from any of my colleagues, oh, I don't know how this is going to play out for me if we file this lawsuit. I haven't heard them say, I don't know where the political chips are going to land about standing up for vulnerable people. I haven't heard them say, I don't know if this is going to be good for my long-term future if I stand up for the civil rights of all of the people in my state. And that has inspired me. Because there are folks, including Tish James on this panel, who have endured unbelievably horrible things said about them by people who know better. And their courage inspires me. And so it's not complicated. You all have been doing this. The National Action Network has been doing this. Reverend Al Sharpton has been doing this for far longer than I've frankly been around. So you already know how to do it. And we just need to do more of it. And we need people who show courage to feel like they're surrounded by other people who have courage, because right now courage is in short supply, and we sure as heck need a lot more of it.
Attorney General Ford wants you to answer the same question. And for those, because I want them to be clear, because many of them, like I said, are leading chapters, 501c4, and they will use your tax status to come after you. And rather than put someone that you may ideologically or politically agree with to do you some favor that will knock them out, know what to do and what not to do, so that you don't put yourself and the community in a bad position. So explain to us what we need to be careful of, what we can do and what we cannot do. Courage and craziness is two different things.
Hey, amen to that. Look, Matt said something that resonated very deeply with me. He's right. As attorneys general, the colleagues that I work with, we don't concern ourselves with necessarily how what we are doing is going to affect us. I am the attorney general. It's what I do, but it's not who I am. Right? I'm a husband, I'm a father, and then I'm attorney general. I might be some stuff in between there. You look at my Twitter feed, it says that on purpose: husband, father, and then attorney general. Right? I mean, it's not my identity. If I'm not up for re-election, I'm running for something else, and if I win, great. If I don't, I'm still going to be fine, right? And at the end of the day, it's important to recognize that when you don't have the fear about how your action is going to affect your next political move, then you are free to do so much more. And that's why we as attorneys general, as colleagues, are able to say we're going to stand up for everybody every single time as quickly as possible on as many things as possible, and we need you to be able to stand up and speak freely in that regard as well. I'm not suggesting that you have to do it, right, because you also got to take care of yourself. You can't put yourself out there all the time. I get it. Everybody has a different kind of way of doing things, and I expect and I respect that, and I'll ask people to get engaged as they do. But I'm going to pass the mic just by referencing two songs that we all have heard because this is, remember y'all, this is tough, but it's not all new, right? It's not all new. I mean, I remember this one guy, what was his name? Marvin Gaye? Yeah, he asked a real simple question. He said, what's going on? Right? And remember what he was talking about back then? War, poverty, picket lines, right? Police brutality. Does that sound familiar? Yes. It's nothing new in that regard, right? And there was another song contemporary with that. I think the name of the group was Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. They didn't ask a question. They made a statement. They said, wake up, everybody. You know that song? Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. You know that song, right? Right? That's what the song they sang, right? But here's what's happening right now. They don't want you to wake up, everybody. That's why they got a war on woke. You understand? They don't want you asking what's going on. They want you ignorant. They want you complacent. That's why they changing history books right before your eyes. And so it's important that you stay woke and that you continue asking questions and you hold folks accountable. That's what you can do, and you can do that anytime, every time, whenever you feel like making it happen. So thanks again for having me here.
A.G. James.
I'm about to lose my mind up in here, up in here. So for the 501c3 organizations, it's important that you be nonpartisan. I want to thank Nan for inviting all of the candidates yesterday to speak on the mayoral forum. That was really critically important. And Nan, like so many other 501c3 organizations, focus on policy. And so it's really critically important that you stay in your lane, that you continue to be nonpartisan, but understand that in this period of chaos and confusion and dysfunction, this is nothing more than to allow individuals, to get individuals distracted and to focus on other things while they're engaging in all of this grift and graft and focusing on getting government contracts in Washington, D.C. But we obviously should move forward. I want to, an authoritarian government requires consent, requires cooperation, it requires bending of the knee. But democracy requires courage. And that's why all of us need to have steel in our backbone at this point in time. And it's also important to know that the absence of tension is justice. And that's why there is so much tension in the United States of America and across the globe right now. It's because of the absence of justice, which requires all of us to raise our voices. And lastly, if anyone asks you about these executive orders and they ask why all of the Democratic attorneys general are standing up, it's because the executive orders are 1, illegal, 2, arbitrary, 3, capricious, 4, they exceed their authority, and 5, it's important to let them know that Congress has the power of the purse and that the President of this United States cannot, with a stroke of a pen, or in his case, a stupid Sharpie, he cannot violate the law in these United States. You need to know your law. You need to know what we are doing. We are standing up for truth and justice. This is the time of creative tension in our country. Use our voice. Use all of the powers that we have. And remember all of the ancestors who died for our right to be here.
A.G. Tom.
I ain't singing, I'll tell you that. But I'm fighting alongside Tish. Let me say just a couple pieces of practical advice. Number one, if you run an organization, a 501c3 or C4, if there are people raising their hands and saying, how can we help? You can get pro bono lawyers to help and stand with you and be ready to protect your organizations. That's number one. Number two, all these attacks on DEI and our organization and the Department of Education and Medicaid and Head Start. They're trying to make us think, they're gaslighting us into thinking that we are breaking the law somehow, right? That we have to certify that we're not engaging in discriminatory behavior. Nobody here is breaking the law, right? We have to assert that, push back. DEI is not against the law, federal or state, right? Having a Black History Month celebration, as Matt Plotkin said, in the White House is not against the law. Having a Hillel house at a university is not against the law. Celebrating and elevating women and women leaders is not against the law. So don't let them pressure you into thinking and saying that it is, right? It is not. We have to push back. The final thing I will say is, as Tish said, it's hard. A lot of people are getting hurt right now, but I always remember how hard it was for my parents and my grandparents, who were essentially refugees chased out of our homeland in China by the Japanese, by the communists, by fire raining down from the sky, right? And all of you and your forebears, not 200 years ago, your parents and your grandparents, and those of us like Reverend Sharpton who are there on the front lines. You think it's hard for us? How hard was it for them? They risked their lives. So yes, we have a lot to fear, but we have nothing to be afraid of. Get out there and fight.
Right.
Give a big hand, the Honorable Paul Weiser of Colorado, Matt Plotkin of New Jersey, Aaron Ford of Nevada, Tish James of New York, and from Connecticut, William Town. Give them all a hand. All right. I'm going to ask our vice chair to come to the mic, and we're going to hear you that have to go to the mental health workshop. It has began, and then but we're going to bring up two members of Congress, the chairperson of the Congressional Black Caucus, Yvette Clarke. But first, we're going to hear from the past chair, or chair emeritus of the Congressional Black Caucus, and that's the one and only Joyce Beatty. Bring Congresswoman Beatty up and Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. Where's Joyce Beatty sitting right there? What did they do with it? Shh. All right. So, yeah, you got it. Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are holding strong, aren't we? Yeah, I didn't share, and Reverend Sharpton may not be aware, but I served in the New York State Attorney General's office, Eliot Spitzer's office, with our Attorney General, Letitia James, when she was head of the Brooklyn Regional Office. And one thing I want you all to appreciate, I served as the Deputy Bureau Chief for the Civil Rights Bureau. While we are fighting back against these illegal executive orders, we also need to appreciate that there are corporations, there are entities, companies who are actually going to try to illegally apply those federal DEI executive orders against you, perhaps in your offices, in your businesses, where you go to work. And you can turn to the New York State Attorney General. You can turn to the Connecticut State Attorney General, wherever you live, and go to the Civil Rights Bureau to make sure that your rights are not being discriminated against, okay? So remember that. It's not just that they're fighting against the federal government. They also are here to fight here in your states for you as well. Good deal? All righty. So it's my honor to bring up right now Congresswoman Joyce Marie Beatty. Some of you know of her because she is out there speaking up and speaking out. She's the U.S. Representative for Ohio's 3rd Congressional District. She's been there since 2013, and she has served as Congressional Black Caucus Chair before. Well, she's the past president of that. She's still holding it down. I bring to you Congresswoman Beatty.
Thank you, my sister. Let me just say good morning, and I want to use my time wisely. So I want to make sure that I divide it into 3 things that I want to share with you. But first, let me just say good afternoon and thank you to everyone for being here today. And I also want to say to Al Sharpton, the Reverend Al Sharpton, a very dear friend. I want to thank him for being a drum major for justice and for his relentless commitment to civil rights and economic empowerment and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as Chair Emerita of the Congressional Black Caucus, I am proud that I get to be in the same room with my sister who hails from Brooklyn, New York, the Honorable Yvette Clarke, who is the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. And let me just say, we are stronger than ever. 62 black members control the largest caucus in our Congress. And you need to know that information is powerful. You need to know when people come to you and say, what are the black members of Congress doing? What are the members of the Congressional Black Caucus? Like Reverend Al said earlier, I don't want you to say you don't know. And I darn sure don't want you to say that they're not doing anything, because that is not true. Al Green from Texas, who sat next to me, had more courage than everybody in this room when he went up against the Congress. And he is one of my best friends in Congress. And he said, I heard you, and I will stand up for justice. We have a black man from New York, Hakeem Jeffries, who stands to make history by being the first black person to serve in Congress. Now, some may say, well, what has he done? Now, I don't have anything against anybody that came before him. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi did a lot of great stuff, but Hakeem Jeffries has done more. He's raised more money. He's unified us 100%. So you need to know what black people are doing for us. Let me just say to you, we are gathered at the most critical hour of our time, in the most unprecedented time of our time. And I want you to know this administration wants us to be asleep, and that's why they're attacking woke. Well, I am saying to you, we got news for them. CBC is woke every day because we're black. And I come to you unapologetically black. I come to you to tell you that this administration is trying to deny our history. And there is a theme to what they're doing. You need to understand that it is not by happenstance that they are attacking the United States Department of Education. You need to understand that it is not by happenstance that they are attacking HUD. It is not by happenstance that they are attacking Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, and the USAID. Now, let me put it in perspective for you. Let's go back in our history. If you think about when we were enslaved during slavery, because we're still enslaved, but when we were enslaved in slavery, they weren't afraid of our blackness. They weren't afraid of our strength, because whatever color you were either deemed in the fields or in the house. you were still enslaved to their rules. If you were strong, they weren't afraid. They just put you out in the fields. But think about what they killed you for. If you could read. If they found out you could read, they took your life. First, they beat you and hoped that you died. And if you spoke up, they put a noose around your neck or shot you in the back. Now, you answer the question, why is the United States Department of Education? Why are they taking our babies and don't want them to read about Amanda Gordon or Toni Morrison or Michelle Obama? Because we become literate. Because education and knowledge is our power. Think about when they take away HUD. Think about when we go from the streets to public housing to Section 8. And then that leads us to our first mortgage. Now that gives us equity. That gives us something that we can use for power. So they are attacking us there. They are attacking our HBCUs. They are attacking our universities only on black things, because now we become educated and we become like a Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. We become like a Maxine Waters. We become like a Jasmine Crockett. We become like a Sheila Jackson Lee, the late Congresswoman. We become like a Tish James and so many more. And let me tell you why our history is so important. I took my then 8-year-old granddaughter to the African American Museum. I was so proud of her. She said, that's Althea Gibson. She said, oh my God, that's the first black justice. She went through it. Oh, that's Harriet Tubman, and that's Sojourner Truth, and that's Frederick Douglass. And I said, didn't you have a great time? And at 8 years of age, she said, I enjoyed it, but... And here it comes from the mouth of a child. She said, why do they only have dead people in here? She said, you need to teach us, grandmother, about those who are alive. You need to tell us that there's a young Jasmine Crockett who's speaking truth to power. She said, you need to tell us that she stands on Maxine Waters' shoulders. You need to tell them, Grammy, that there's a Joyce Beatty that was the 10th woman to chair the Congressional Black Caucus. She said, because you all who are alive gives us hope. She said, I want to be like Ketanji Brown Jackson. She said, I want to be like my mother, who is a federal judge. She said, because I want to stand on the shoulders of not only those who are advocates. When I brought her into the community, she said, I want to be like that young sister over there who's hollering and screaming and speaking truth to power, because what we need to let our young children know is that we have a voice. And so that's what I want you to tell people when you go back home. I want you to tell them that what I learned at Nan's conference was that I need to go back and repeat what the Reverend Al Sharpton has given us. I need to go back and regurgitate what we learned on the panels. Because if we don't understand public policy, if we don't understand that what the Trump administration is doing is to keep us in the darkness, to keep us from moving forward, but it is because of you. It is not just our time, and it is not just our role. But we need you more than ever. And let me just tell you why. I have crossed that Edmund Pettus Bridge a number of times. I was there on the 50th anniversary of the reenactment. I was there for the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr. having given that powerful speech. But let me tell you what changes history is having those people who stand with us. That is the only thing that changes history. And you may applaud on that. You are what changes history. When I go to any civil rights movement, I go to the front line where the foot soldiers are. I go to the middle of the line and I fall down and say, thank you to our seniors. That's why they want to take away our Social Security. They want to make sure that those who are 65, that we're taking away their lifeline. Because see, when you retire, nobody owns you. You get to have your own voice. So it's not by happenstance. They want to take care of our Medicaid and take it away because they think that that is the lifeline for black people who might at this time need a little government assistance. But let me just tell you, we have members of Congress, we have people who worked in the White House when Democrats were in charge, who grew up in public housing. We have people who got that free cheese like I did, and my mama turned it into mac and cheese and grilled cheese for us on Sunday morning. So I know what it's like to live in the community, and it does not matter where you started. It does not matter where you came from. It matters what you're doing in this time. It matters where you are today. And I don't care if you're behind the pulpit, singing in the choir, or sitting in the audience. When we are in the fight, like we are in now, when we have someone who is unvetted, unelected, in the White House, a billionaire pulling the strings for this government, we need you. We need you like we did for Obamacare. When we were in the minority, 71 times they brought to the United States House floor to take away our health care because that was the lifeline for us. They didn't want us to be well. They didn't want college students matriculating to stay on their parents' insurance. They wanted to bankrupt us of our health. But we marched, we protested. And today, we still have health care and Obamacare. Do not let them get you caught up in what you can and can't do, because this conference will tell you what you can do. You can march. You can protest. Now, just don't call me. I love you, and I appreciate when you call me. But call them other folks on the other side that's not voting like I vote. Anybody that does not stand with the Congressional Black Caucus or an Al Green or an Yvette Clarke or a Hakeem Jeffries, you need to make sure that you let them know who you are and who you stand with. Let me just say to you, we are not here by accident. We have heard from some of the most brilliant minds in our United States. And so if we break it down for you, what they are telling to us, history repeats itself. Whether it is the good or the bad, history repeats itself. And when we went through the 1800s and when we went through slavery and when we went through when they told black women that they could not march in the suffrage march, they told us only white women could march because white women were fighting for the right to vote because we had no rights. Black men had only gotten those rights, as you know, if you owned a little bit of property. But it was 22 black women who decided, I am not going to let that stand. And those 22 black women from the ages of 18 to 25, dressed in their black, decided that they were going to stand up for justice. They were going to stand up for our freedom. And so all morning we've heard one word, courage. Do you know what it must have been like them at that time in history that they stood up and they marched for us? And they were a part of a sorority that's now a part of the Divine Nine. So you see, it was Delta, Sigma Theta sororities, 22 founders who started that march. But I could tell you it did not stop there. You see, if we had not had the civil rights movement, the voting rights movement, the Jobs Act, if we would not have had the years of 1963 and 64 and 65 and the years of Martin Luther King Jr. But see, you have to remember that what propelled him was when Rosa Parks refused to get up and get out of her seat on December 1st, 1955. She wasn't tired by her feet. She was tired, and she decided to be woke. She was tired of letting people tell her that she could not ride on that bus. But you need to make sure you get the history right. So you see, she was sitting, then called the colored or the Negro section of that bus. And so when that white man came and looked at her and the bus driver said, "You'll be arrested if you don't get up," she simply looked out the window and folded her arms. That's courage. She knew she was going to be arrested. But see, when we joined together, she decided, I need a minister and I need an attorney. And they called the young Martin Luther King Jr. So it's important to you to know that it was Rosa and Martin and so many more young college students. But let me fast forward, because we're not always on the same page initially, and that's okay. But look to our history. You see, there was a young John Lewis who was just a teenager who defied his parents to go and march because he looked up to a little older John Lewis, looked up to a little older Martin Luther King Jr. Now, they were on opposite ends of their thoughts. John Lewis wanted to holler and protest, and Martin was saying, we got to pick the right time. We have to be unified. We might have to be a little more patient than we want to be. But they came together. And why do I tell you that? I tell you that because you've got to take what a young fighter, whether it's an advocate, whether it's an activist, whether it is a pastor, whether it is a lawyer, whether it is a member of Congress, you can't pit us against one another. You can't say, why aren't you doing what a young Max Frost is doing? Or why aren't you doing what a Jasmine Crockett is doing? Because you see, they're doing what they've seen us do. And that's what the power is. And she recognized it. Every day we go to that House floor, Jasmine Crockett comes over and says, Big sis, what do you think about this? And I go over to Maxine Waters and I say, Big sis, what do you think about this? I tell you this because we stand on each other's shoulders. And that is what progress is. That is what unity is. And lastly, let me go to diversity, equity, and inclusion. You see, you need to know a little bit about the history. Never in the history of the United States Congress did they have a committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Never. It was when we took over, code for when you get up and go vote, then you control the government. You got up and went and voted. We got a black president of the United States of America. You got up and voted. And we got a black female on the United States Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson. You got up and voted, and you got the powerful Maxine Waters to be the first black chair of one of the most prestigious committees in the United States Congress, Financial Services. It controls HUD. It controls the FEC. It controls the Reserve Bank. Let me just break it down. It controls anything that got to do with money. It has everything to do with anything that controls banking. And what was one of the first things Maxine Waters did? Because she had courage. She created a committee, now follow me, a committee on one of the most exclusive, hardest committees to get on. And there was a little black girl from Ohio named Congresswoman Joyce Beatty that got on that committee as a freshman. And it was Maxine Waters that said, I believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she appointed me to be the chairwoman of the first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee in the history. And we moved the needle. We had corporate America making $50 billion or more in banking that had to give black folks positions, not jobs. Follow me, positions. We made sure that there were people in the C-suites because, see, when you control the government, you have the power. Now, what we heard from Michael Eric Dyson and others earlier, they do not control the government. They control the administration, and we are the government. We can move them out of office if we vote. Let's take back our power. Let's stand up for truth and justice. Because now we have another sister, the Honorable Yvette Clarke from Brooklyn, New York. One of the first things Congresswoman Clarke did, she said, we're not going to make a mistake with history, and we don't need to start over. She created a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force. And you know what Jesse Jackson Jr.'s son did? He created a diversity, equity, and inclusion caucus. So you need to have information, because information is powerful. So when people say they're not going to do D, E, and I, you need to tell them, I don't know who the hell the they are, but I can tell you the members of the Congressional Black Caucus is standing for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let me close. Let me close by saying today, this conference is arming you with the responses you need to go back and give. Do not get in a line and march. Do not hold your fist up in the air and have someone look at you, and maybe even a reporter, and come to you and say, why are you out here? Why are you protesting? Then you need to give them short sound bites and say, because I'm woke, I'm unapologetically black, I'm fighting for my ancestors, I'm standing up here because I am the government. And Musk and Trump are only the administration. And they too will go away, and we will have our time to shine. The powerful James Clyburn usually begins with a scripture, and he ends with some words from a very powerful writer, author, American politician, Alexis de Tocqueville, who has always said to us powerful words. Now, I'm not Jim Clyburn, and I didn't know a lot about Alexis de Tocqueville. So I looked him up, and I thought, well, hell, I got something I want to add to that, and that's the powerful words of Angela Davis. So I'm going to end with putting the scholar with another scholar, a bad sister that fought for our rights and civil rights. And those words went something like this, paraphrasing them. Those words are, nothing is more wonderful than the art of being free. Nothing is more wonderful than the art of being free. And that was Alexis de Tocqueville. But then my sister, my friend, and I know her well, Angela Davis said, but freedom is a constant struggle. Freedom is a constant struggle. And then you add to it that the Congresswoman from Ohio, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, said, and today they are trying to strip it away. But we will not let that happen. We have fought and bled and died for our freedom. We do not take our freedom lightly, so we will stay woke. We will not let them overcome us. And now, I'm not going to sing, but I'm going to tell you, if you didn't know, now you know. And I'm Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, and I approve this message. God bless you. Stay in the fight, because freedom, freedom, freedom will ring. Thank you.
Freedom, freedom will win. Thank you, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. So here's the deal. We're about to bring out a phenomenal woman, phenomenal leader, and I got some bragging rights here. First, she was my council member in Brooklyn. Then she was my congresswoman from Brooklyn. And now she is our chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. I bring to you the Honorable Yvette Clarke. That was kind of weak, y'all. Can a sister get a clap up in here? Good, Brooklyn's always in the house. Good afternoon, y'all. First of all, let me thank Jennifer Jones-Austin for that wonderful introduction. When your neighbor introduces you, it's always very special. As has been stated, I am Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke, Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus for the 119th session of Congress, and proud representative of New York's 9th Congressional District, located in Central and Southwest Brooklyn. It is an honor to be here with you all today for the National Action Network's annual legislative conference. I want to thank, of course, our beloved Reverend Al Sharpton. Yes. And the National Action Board of Directors for their tireless leadership and for organizing this year's convention right here in New York City. Being a light in dark times. I cannot think of a group of leaders, activists, and change makers who better exemplify the theme of this year's convention. What I want to add to this year's theme is, what side are you on? Whose side are you on? It is critical that as we are gathered in this moment, given what we're up against, that we center ourselves, that we dig deep into our DNA, that we recognize the moment we're in, and that we gird ourselves for the battle ahead. Whose side are you on? These are truly dark times, and our communities are concerned about the mounting threat of Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Republicans in Washington. Today, the nation we live in, the system of governance known as democracy, access to economic opportunities, fundamental freedoms, and access to the ballot box are all under attack in many unprecedented ways. Just think about what has transpired over the past few months. In just 74 days, 74 days, y'all, of the Trump administration, we have seen attacks on the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship, an illegal federal funding freeze, attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, our workforce, civil servants. We've seen the GOP tax scam and billions of dollars in proposed cuts to Medicaid, Social Security, SNAP, and the beginning of a tariff war. We've seen Donald Trump hand over the keys of the government and our private information to a corrupt billionaire South African, Elon Musk. And we've seen Donald Trump sign an executive order to illegally take away power from the states to change how federal elections are administered across the country, while openly musing with the idea of running for a third term in office. We cannot overstate the gravity of the moment that we're in. We cannot overstate the impact that Donald Trump's executive actions and policies will have on Black communities. In particular, the mass firings and attacks on diversity in the federal government and assault on Black workers. 1 in 5 civil servants are Black. For decades, federal jobs have provided a pathway to the middle class for many Black Americans in the face of discrimination in the private sector. Y'all know, your parents told you, get educated, get a good government job. Hello? The purge of the federal workforce is an attack on Black jobs and an attempt to kick us out of the middle class. Cutting billions of dollars from Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and SNAP is truly just, it's a matter of life and death. These cuts will leave millions of Black children, Black families, Black seniors, and people with disabilities vulnerable and without a lifeline. And the attacks on the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship, shows all the direction Republicans would like to take our country. We are at the bullseye of what's taking place. According to some estimates, the Trump administration has begun implementation of nearly 45% of Project 2025. Now, we talked about this last time we were here. We talked about it in the media. We talked about it in the communities. We talked about it across this country. And here is what we were talking about. They are actually trying to implement it. With a Republican trifecta, a supermajority, a conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court, the headwinds against us are strong. But we are stronger. We are by no means powerless to fight back. Whose side are you on? You gotta ask yourself that question. Under the leadership of Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, assistant leader Joe Neguse, and the Rapid Response Task Force and Litigation Working Group, the CBC and the House Democrats are fighting back in Congress, 61 strong. 4 senators for the first time in history. 2 Black women serving in the United States Senate. I don't know if y'all got a chance to see Brother Cory Booker take down that old record set by Strom Thurmond. You know, this is about whose side are you on? The CBC and House Democrats are fighting back in Congress. We are fighting in the courts, and we're fighting in our communities. Right now, there are more than 100 active pieces of legislation against Trump's executive orders, many of which are gaining ground in the courts. The CBC began the 119th Congress with 62 members, the largest membership in our nation's history, from Oregon to Connecticut, from Rhode Island to California, from Colorado to New York. The CBC is standing strong. Our strength and our unity are our greatest assets. Let me repeat that. Our strength, and our unity are our greatest assets because of the work of leaders like Leader Jeffrey and the CBC, Reverend Sharpton, and so many others who are organizing across this nation. We have held strong against the slim majority and MAGA extremism. The CBC will always stand firm against efforts to roll back our rights and strip away our fundamental freedoms. We will stand firm against efforts to demonize diversity and cut off access to economic opportunities in our communities. We will stand firm against efforts to suppress the power of our vote or deny black voters fair and equal representation at the ballot box. And we will stand firm against any effort to make our communities less safe and less prosperous. Whose side are you on? We cannot afford to play footsie with folk who say they're about the movement, but a weak need when it comes to stand up in the movement. In partnership with the National Action Network, we will continue fighting because we know that allowing Donald Trump to take us backward is simply not an option. Simply not an option. We are here today because blood was shed. We are here today in the beautiful Sheraton Hotel because sacrifices were made. We are here today because our ancestors survived the Middle Passage. We are here today because they survived Jim Crow, lynching, hanging. We are the strongest of the strong. And therefore, much is required of us. In partnership with the National Action Network, we will fight. We will be more determined than ever to win on behalf of the communities that we are privileged to serve each day. But let me say something. You cannot just elect individuals to go to Washington, D.C., do the work that we do in the legislature, and not be educating our people on the ground. Our folks consume way too much propaganda. Our people are being inundated with false narratives, with misinformation. You know, I come out of Brooklyn, where we had the Black Power movement. We had a struggle for public education. And in that moment, parents, neighbors, community stood together to make sure to hold the public school system accountable. And when the school system pushed back, when the racism reared its ugly head, our folk were determined to educate their children anyhow. They started independent educational programs. They brought teachers into the church house. They did everything in terms of sacrificing time and treasure to make sure that a wholesome community of children were raised. Can we sacrifice and make that happen for our children today? That's weak, y'all. Can we sacrifice and make that happen for our children today? They can't just be sitting on TikTok. They can't just be listening to any old influencer. They have to be influenced by our lived experience, our struggle, and how we got over. They have to be undergirded with the strength and an understanding of who they are, to whom they belong, and the power that they have. We have to strengthen them so they don't consume this propaganda, believe it as gospel, and undermine their own development. That is what their adversaries are working so hard at right now. Our children need to know what they say. They have a war on woke. They have a war on them. Our children need to know that when they say DE&I is not the way that society will be ordered, that they will disrupt and say, I am DE&I, and I am a part of this society, and I will take my rightful place in this society. And so as we undergird ourselves, because understand that this is not a moment, this is a movement. This is not an episode, this is an epic. We are part of a journey of liberation. And we cannot stop, we will not stop, we cannot stop until we are free. They will use every manner of wickedness, of wretchedness to undermine us. They're making us believe that everything in this society is built on your wealth. Understand that our people came from no wealth at all, that their labor was exploited for hundreds of years and continues to this day. In the midst of that, we stand strong in our humanity. We stand strong in understanding that our liberation is non-negotiable. And so let us prepare ourselves. This is a battle of epic proportion. Do not minimize what we are dealing with. The level of vitriol, the ongoing assault, the shedding of the workforce, the implementation of tariffs have real-time implications for how we will live in this country. Let us be disruptive. Let us be creative. Let us use all of the talent, the skill, and the expertise that we have. Let us educate. Do not just agree to be agreeable. Understand that we have been demonized throughout the history of this nation. However, history would not be complete in this nation were it not for our sacrifices, for our talent, for our creativity, for our power to move mountains in the midst of adversity. Let us tap into our DNA. Let us ask, whose side are you on? Let us remember
that in the midst of this, we will come out victorious. We will chart a path forward that ensures our communities have more access to economic opportunities, a path that protects our sacred right to vote, a path that provides access to health care and affordable housing, a path that keeps our communities safe. What are we going to say to our children and grandchildren in the day after? Do you have a vision for an America that looks so different from anything we have ever experienced before? In the victory, our society must be a reflection of the best of who we are and what we have to contribute to our society. Together, we will see our communities through this storm. And I firmly believe, the members of the Congressional Black Caucus believe that working together, there are better times ahead. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Better times ahead. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. We will make it so. God bless you. God keep you. Stay strong. Stay safe. Stay healthy. See you on the battlefield.
Give another hand. Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. There are many people that are given many adjectives, descriptions that don't deserve them. And then there are many that are not given the right descriptions that do deserve them. We have seen in our lifetime someone who's been a trailblazer and that has literally changed politics in the South, which therefore meant politics for this nation. Their trailblazing campaign around voter rights, voter registration, literally put people in the U.S. Senate. Literally. Her mere presence is what gave the momentum that when we all went to Joe Biden, he put a black woman on the ticket. Had this woman not did what she did, we could not have gotten what we got. And if she had not done what she did, those two Democratic senators from Georgia couldn't have possibly been elected. But she planted the seed. And too many of us like to pick the flowers like the flowers got there by themselves. But if you don't remember the seed, you won't be able to duplicate the flowers. And that's why I ask every year for her to come. And I think that she wants herself. I saw Shirley Chisholm, who I was her youth director, never get her due. I'm determined that this sister's got to get her due, and we're going to make sure she gets it. The one and only political leader of this country from the ground up, from the state of Georgia, Stacey Abrams.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Al. I was in D.C. yesterday. I was supposed to be in D.C. today. But when Al Sharpton tells you where you're supposed to be, you know that's where you're going to be. So it is always my honor, and it is forever a pleasure to be here with Nan. The name alone is why I like being here. It's not just about action. This is the national, recognizing we are linked together. This is a network, recognizing we have to work together. And in the middle of it all is the action that says we're not going to wait for change to come, we will make it so. The National Action Network of 2025. Thank you for having me. As Reverend Al has pointed out, I've spent a little bit of time working in the South. I remind folks I was born in Wisconsin. Yay, Wisconsin, and their good job this way. Only lived there for 3 years, just long enough to understand cold and cheese curds. Moved back to Mississippi, where my family is from, grew up in Mississippi, and then came of age in Georgia. My roots are planted in the South, but I recognize that the work we do in the South has to go everywhere. Because if we can solve the challenges, if we can face the ignominies, if we can understand the intentions, then we don't only serve ourselves, we serve the nation that we love and the world we belong to. That if we can tackle the injustices and the iniquities, the infirmities and the indignities, then we have the ability to change the future for everyone. And so I am of the South. I like to say I'm a daughter of the South, but I'm also a student of history. I'm a student who has gone to Spelman College and the University of Texas and Yale Law School, but I've also read widely and listened closely and understood that what we are facing now, we have already seen before. There is nothing new under the sun, as Ecclesiastes told us. There are those who say that we repeat history, but no, it just rhymes. And sometimes it's a bit off key. But what we are facing in this country today, we have seen before. We have seen tyranny on the rise before. We have seen autocracy take hold before. We have seen this nation on the verge of collapse, not because we don't know right, but because we are silent. I was reading a couple of days ago an op-ed that was in the Washington Post that reminded me of how close we have been before to what we are facing now. President, World War I, and we Master General who decided that there were certain communications, there were newspapers and magazines that told the truth, and so he declared them unmailable. He banned them from being sent around the country at a time where radio and TV weren't prolific enough to cover the gaps in information. Because if you want to weaken a people, you make sure they don't know what's going on. They then started cherry picking the people they liked and didn't like. They were arresting and abducting and deporting because it was easier to make people silent than to hold themselves accountable. And this was at the behest of the leader of the free world. If we fast forward to today, we have to understand that we are on the verge of tyranny again. This is not something that might be, this is something that is becoming. There's an extraordinary professor at Princeton University, Kim Schnempel, and she has this chart of the 10 signs of autocracy, the script that they follow, and what she has explained is that we have to update our understanding. We have to know that tyranny doesn't look the way it did in the 1950s and 60s when juntas and military personnel would come in and raze a community to the ground and take over the places of power. Today, tyranny starts with elections. It just happens that sometimes the free and fair election is the last one that you see for a while. Because if we look at what happened in Turkey, what happened in India, what happened in Hungary, what happened in Russia, that began with elections. Bolsonaro got elected. Maduro got elected. Tyranny no longer requires the invective of overthrow. The problem is we invite them in. And once they hold power, they have a very clear path to tyranny. They begin by making certain that the branches of government get broken at the root. You see, you make certain your legislative branch is complicit in all that you do. And you weaken your judiciary until they can't stop you from what you want to do. You issue executive orders that have the sound of law but not the effect of law. But when you're in charge of the law, it's hard to make you stop. And you make sure that you hold your power because, well, you appoint loyalists, you appoint sycophants, you appoint the inept to take over positions of power. You put them in charge of the military, in charge of the judiciary. You put them in charge of national secrets that they whisper on a text message. You put them in charge. You put them in charge of the health of a people while they pretend that disease doesn't kill. You put the inept and the loyalist in power because if you can stop it at the top, you can freeze progress where it is. So you have made complicit the legislative and you have made inert the judiciary. You have now issued your edicts and you've put in place your flunkies to make it so. And then your next step is to make sure that the people can't rise up because they don't know what's real. And so you start to kick the Associated Press out of events so they can't tell the truth, and you surround yourself with an echo chamber that only tells the propaganda you want heard. You threaten those who would tell the truth about who you are to those who have the right to tell you we don't want you here anymore. And when you've taken control of the media, then you come after the place where we find ourselves today. Because you got to blame someone for your failings. When you fail to deliver on your economic promises, it's got to be somebody's fault. So you pick on transgender children trying to play kickball. When you are passing a $5 trillion tax cut for the wealthiest people in human history, you've got to blame black veterans who got a little bit of money to start a business. When you do not know how to save the lives of the people you are called to serve, you blame a disabled person for needing a little bit of help. You see, you demonize those who are marginalized because they're hard to pick out of the lineup. And so you take the big problems and the big mistakes and you take your failures and you blame it on those who are the least able to defend themselves. You make the vulnerable the targets so they don't pay attention to you. That is where we are today. And that is why I am here to talk to you about DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion has been the subject of more executive orders than anything else that this administration has declared wrong. And you got to ask yourself, DEI, why is that the thing that you believe is the source of all ill? Why are you willing to strip the Naval Academy of the story of Jackie Robinson? Why are you afraid of the name Enola Gay, a woman whose name was just painted on the side of a plane? Why are you willing to erase the history of the code talkers, the Native Americans who helped us win the great wars? You attack DEI because you are attacking those who tell the truth about who we are. You see, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI isn't new. It is 249 years old, and I can prove it. Because when this nation was created, when our founding documents were written, we said that we were going to be a nation for all people, and it has taken us 249 years to try to make that so, and it's been working. You see, we got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. We got the 19th Amendment. But we also got Title I education because in the 1960s, if you were poor or black or disabled, you weren't getting the education you were entitled to. And so we created a Department of Education that made sure that no matter where you began, there was a pathway for you to get somewhere else. And they are coming after education because education is part of DEI. They are coming after the economy of the United States of America. They are dismantling the Minority Development Business Agency. But let's think about this. The Minority Development Business Agency has been around since the 1960s, trying to provide a little bit of equity. And in a nation that spends almost $1 trillion in federal contracts, 94% of those dollars don't go to minority-owned businesses. People of color comprise more than 40% of the population, and yet we are reduced to 6% of the opportunity. And you think that's the danger that we face? They come after our right to vote when there is an executive order that tells us that elections will no longer be free and fair in this country unless you can provide documentation you were legally denied. Then what we see is that DEI is terrifying to them. Because education, what you know, the economy, what you do, and elections, who is in power. That is how we have made America the country that it is, and that is what terrifies them every single day. DEI is not dead. DEI is working, and that's why they're terrified. But the problem is we are falling into the trap that they set for us. Because if you want somebody to lose what they have, you convince them that they didn't want it in the first place. You start by delegitimizing what they say and what they know and who they are. You start by taking the language that they use and using it against them. You convince them that if this guy doesn't like it, then it must be wrong. It's what bullies have done since time immemorial, at least since the 3rd grade. You take somebody's name and you turn it into an epithet. You take somebody's truth and you turn it into a lie, and they start to convince themselves that maybe they didn't mean it. But let's see what they're talking about, because DEI is very simple. It's diversity, meaning all people, regardless of race or religion, national origin, or sexual orientation. It is about all people belonging in this place, in this space that we call a nation, and on this earth that we call a world. And they are telling us that they don't believe in diversity. Well, we should believe them. Then they tell us that they don't want equity, that equity is somehow unjust. Well, why is fairness unjust? What they are saying is that equity is wrong. Well, the opposite of equity is inequity. And we've tried that one. We fought wars over that one. We've passed constitutional amendments over that one. We have the Americans with Disabilities Act over that one. We have the Family Medical Leave Act over that one. We have labor unions over that one. Equity works, and that's why they're terrified of it. And then there is the great sin of inclusion as they see it. Because if you are willing to include everyone, then that means no one is going to get ahead without somebody else tagging along. But when your mindset is one of scarcity, then you are terrified of other people having more. So when we hear ourselves saying, well, we can't say DEI because they don't like it, I say, I don't care. Because their system is to begin by demonizing our language, and then they move to litigating away our rights. That is why they are going after and firing all of our civil servants, because if you can gut the government, then you can make the government what you wanted it to be in the first place. If you fire our civil servants who are less than the population would demand, we had 225 million people in this country and 2 million federal workers in 1980. We are now in 2025 with 330 million people, and we've added exactly 400,000 more people. And so when they are gutting government and telling us that it's because we have too many federal workers, the math ain't mathin'. But what they want us to believe is that they're doing something for our good. They are not out for our good. They are out for themselves. And so we have to recognize that they begin by demonizing our language and litigating away our rights so they can legislate their permanent power. And they are doing it because they don't intend to ever give up control again. This is an existential fight, and we've got to treat it as such. This is not business as usual. This is not the normal course of disagreement. This is about whether or not we make it to 250 years as a nation. And we've got work to do. And National Action Network, I'm here to give you your assignment. Our first job is to speak up. Say, speak up. We have to use DEI everywhere we can, and not we should call it diversity, equity, and inclusion so people know what we're talking about. But then we call it DEI because it makes them mad. We call it DEI because it is ours. We have let them steal our language. They have stolen our words. They have stolen our concepts. They have stolen our values. And we do not win unless we are willing to speak up and take it back. So say, speak up. We have to talk about DEI everywhere, and not with an apology, and not by ducking our heads and saying, well, we should call it something else. The thing is, they can narrow our language, and that's how they narrow our minds. We must talk about the underlying and the underpinnings of DEI, because civil rights matter. Human rights matter. Access matters. And the best way you can talk about it is to say that DEI is our right, that these values are our foundation. So we've got to speak up. So say, speak up. And next, we have to speak out. Say, speak out. We got to stop talking to each other. The problem is we will say amen to each other as long as the choir keeps singing, but when we are out in the public, we are suddenly, I don't know if y'all remember the little, the frog, the little frog in the cartoon who could dance and sing until somebody was looking. That's how we've been about our rights. We are good talking about it to each other, but the minute we're in front of somebody who might not agree, we suddenly lose. We are Michigan J. Frog. We can't remember the words or the moves. But we've got a responsibility to speak out. Say, speak out. That means when you are in that bank and they are telling you why they can't give you that loan, you need to speak out and ask them exactly what is wrong. What law are they looking at that says you can't have that loan? When a veteran is let from their job because they are told that they are no longer allowed to be hired because of DEI, if you can serve our country, we can serve you. That is DEI. When a transgender child is told that they are a problem, you tell me how a child wanting to be with their friends is a threat to national security. We have to speak out, and not just to each other, but to those who don't want to hear us. It doesn't matter if we're telling folks who agree with us. We've got to speak out. Say, speak out. We've got to tell our truth on social media. When we see a lie, don't repeat the lie, just tell the truth. And don't wait until you have a follower count that makes you happy. Tell the truth to get your follower count to follow. We've got to speak out and tell the stories of how our lives were changed, how the inequities of this nation were cured by folks like the Congress people we have sent from around this country, but also by mayors and city council members, but more importantly by citizens who refuse to be silent. We have to speak out and demand our rights because they will not give them to us. So we're going to first do what? We're going to speak up first. Say, we're going to speak up, and then we're going to speak out, and last we're going to stand firm. Say, stand firm. We have watched companies cower in the face of threats. We watched Target forget everything they told us in 2020. And 5 million people have said, we heard you and we're going somewhere else. We saw Costco say, we said it and we meant it. And 7.7 million people have shown up saying, we're going to put our money where our mouths are. We work for companies that are trying to have their cake and eat it too, to demand that to say out loud, well, they're done with diversity, but they still need you to buy their things, work in their companies, and support their visions. We have to stand firm. Say, stand firm. We have to demand that the leaders that we elect do the job we demanded them to do. And if we have to show up and remind them, then we need to show up not just in Congress, but we've got mayors who need to be reminded that they have elected office too. We've got city council members who say, well, that's not my job. Well, if you are an elected official, it is your job to protect your people. We've got zoning board meetings that we should be attending. We have to start from the bottom up because they are going to crush us from the top down. So if we don't build our firmament and stand firm on it, we will not win, but we can win. We will win because if we speak up, say speak up. If we speak out, say speak out. If we stand firm, say stand firm. Then we will remind them that we are the foundation of this nation, that we built this nation, that we are this nation, that this is our nation, and that together we will defend this nation. We will do what we must because we have no other choice. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's give that last panel one more round. Okay. Again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reverend Steffi Bartley. I am the Northeast Regional Director. I've also been given an opportunity under the leadership of Reverend Sharpton to be the moderator of today's discussion, and that is broadband, how important it is for us to understand we really can't make it without internet access. And so I'm about to bring on our panel. They're going to be coming out and we're going to be discussing something that's so vitally important to all of us. So give yourselves a hand for being here to discuss. As they're coming out, I'm going to be bringing out our panelists. Our first panelist will be is Clayton Banks here. Clayton Banks is the co-founder of Silico Harlem. Larry Irving, president and CEO of Irving Group. Deborah Linton, former chief of FCC, Cable Bureau, telecommunication policy expert. Tyrone, CEO, Career Communication Group. Nicole Turner-Lee, senior fellow, Booking Institute, author of The Digital Invisible, and Dr. Asian Valentine, digital equity advocate, public knowledge. As they're coming, let's give them all a hand. Okay. Let's dive right into this. Let me just give you a little short bio of Dr. Nicole. Dr. Lee is a lead in the digital inclusion and the author of Digitally Invisible. She's putting that book up. Make sure you get a copy of it before she leaves. A book about the digital exclusion impact the communities of color. She works to bring attention to policy changes needed to close the digital divide. Dr. Ashen Valentine works for public knowledge, fighting to make sure all people, no matter where they live or how much money they make, can connect to internet and get the skills they need to strive for a striving future online. Clayton Banks, co-founder Silico Harlem, which works to bring internet access technology into underserved communities. He is focused on helping local residents develop digital skills, improve their economic future. Tyrone, he is the CEO of Career and Communication Groups. He helps open doors for young people, especially underserved communities, to gain digital skills and find career opportunities in the STEM field. Deborah is a former chief of the FCC Cable Bureau. She was the telecommunication policy expert and has worked to improve broadband across the underserved area. We have also Larry Irving, who is the president and CEO of Irving Groups, a consulting firm specialized in telecommunication, technology, and digital inclusion policy. He is widely credited for coining the term digital divide. During the tenure as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Communication and Information under the Clinton administration, where he led the National Telecommunication Information Administration. That goes NTIA. A longtime advocate for broadband equality, Irvin plays a key role in shaping the U.S. internet policy and highlighting disparity in digital access, particularly for underserved communities. He works as he influenced both national and global interaction aimed to close the digital divide. Let's give them another hand. I want to try to dive right into this, and so as we saw Nicole show you all her book, I want to start this discussion with her as we are looking at the first thing that I think is so vitally important, and that is the danger of digital exclusion is a civil rights issue. We believe that. And so, Dr. Nicole, in your book, Digitally Invisible, you describe how digital exclusion creates a new underclass. Can explain why digital exclusion is a civil rights issue and why it urges to fix this for the community without reliable internet.
Well, thank you, Reverend Bartley, and hello, National Action Network. You know, I just always feel so at home here, so thank you. And if you see me up here smiling with a book, I didn't have a book the last time I was here, so I had to just promote it this time. So I'm a sociologist, and I'm also a person from New York, and I believe that the Black community has a lot of issues before us, and I'm sure throughout the conference, we've talked about many of the issues that we're facing. Conference title is about bringing light to the darkness. So there's a lot of things that we probably talked about in this last couple of days to sort of bring back our agency to our communities. Probably you talked about voting rights. We probably talked about our birthright. We talked a little bit about our power. What we're going to talk about on this panel is our digital right. And our digital right is one in which is so important because how many of you in the last couple of years have walked into a place to engage in business? Just raise your hand if in the last few days, months, years, you've actually been in line versus online. How many of you have experienced the fact that the way we learn, we earn, we love, we communicate with our loved ones is not necessarily by going to their home, knocking on their door, but we're doing a lot of stuff with these things, and we're also using the internet. Now, I could stay with all of us, as I would myself, and say that my visibility on the internet is buying a lot of stuff. How many of you got a lot of packages that come to your door? Don't say nothing, because you know I'm talking about everybody, right? But there's one thing to be connected because you're purchasing something. There's another thing to be connected digitally because it is your lifeline to your quality of life. So when I did my book, allow me to just share a couple of stories to answer the question and allow my other colleagues to jump in this debate. I went around the country prior to the pandemic. You all remember the pandemic was a period of time that everybody had to go into social distancing and they had to actually go to the internet to see their doctor, to learn, to work. Well, let me just tell you this. There were a lot of people that were trying to get on the internet before the pandemic, and they were equally unsuccessful when the pandemic hit. I visited a place in Phoenix, Arizona. I saw a sister sit there and beg for a library card. She was begging so hard that the tears were coming down her face. I write about her in my book. When I followed her to the parking lot, do you know why she needed that library card before the pandemic? Because she had just been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer and she did not have internet at home. That's one story. I went to Marion, Alabama, 2 hours outside of Birmingham, the birthplace of T.D. Jakes, Coretta Scott King, and so many other civil rights leaders. There's a principal there that had access for each of her students in her rural school, a black rural school of 700 kids. She was so excited before the pandemic. When I went to visit the school, and I write about this, people were high-fiving her with a tablet under their arm and a cell phone in the other. When the pandemic hit, guess what happened? She emailed me and told me those tablets were like books without paper because her kids could not get online to learn. They were too far from a hotspot and had no transportation to get downtown. And imagine, when we talk about the quality of education in our country, the fact that these kids had to experience a lack of access was almost going back to Brown versus Board of Education when we didn't have books. Wow. Being connected is a civil rights issue. And it's about the visibility of black people to actually engage in the economy in a meaningful way. You can sit here with me today and say, well, I don't want none of that internet. I have a lot of people in this book that said they didn't want no part of the internet. And then I asked them if they use Cash App, and they said, oh, yeah, I use it. I said, then you're part of the internet. Right. Might be a few of you in this room that say, I don't use the internet, but you use the internet. The bottom line is we have to be visible in a meaningful way, not just purchasing, but we have to be visible about improving our quality of life. Pastor, I'm taking my signal, so I'm going to be quiet.
There you go. Thank you. So Dr. Valentin, what lesson from the past civil rights movement can we apply today to ensure digital equality is treated as a fundamental right rather than a privilege?
Yeah, so first let me thank the folks at NAN, Reverend Al Sharpton, my friend Ebony Riley, who heads up the policy shop for NAN, the NAN staff, and the hotel staff for making sure that we have a place to be in community with one another this week, particularly when people are working tirelessly to dehumanize us, and they're doing it with joy. Let me first say that anything that has ever been great has been because of the genius and the creativity and the intellect of Black people. So whether we start with something from the ground up, whether we remix it and put our own spin on it, or take it to another level, it's about how we empathize with others, it's about how we create, it's about how we find joy. And there are people who are making billions and billions of dollars on platforms because of our creativity. And these are platforms that ride on broadband networks. And there are millions of people in this country, as Nicole just said, who don't consistently experience the benefits of broadband because they can't afford it, because they live in areas where there's only one provider, and that falls into an area that's a monopoly, and that's similar to what we saw with housing redlining, right? And that's what we call digital redlining. And there's also people who just can't experience the economic benefits of broadband and broadband-enabled industries. So it's a civil rights issue because the absence of an affordable, reliable broadband connection means that people are denied access to health care, as you just mentioned, education, economic opportunities, civic engagement, and more. And as you just mentioned, the internet is a literal lifeline. And I think about even, this was the case before January 20th, but since January 20th, when the billionaire crew started to doge agencies, it became even more urgent. Being able to download documents to prove how much you've paid into Social Security, where you stand as it relates to student loan repayment, became not just urgent, but emergent. Because we don't play about our money, and we certainly don't play about other people playing with our money. But preferably, you would be doing this with a private connection in your home, on a desktop, or a laptop that you own, and with the digital skills needed to navigate it. And I think it's just really important to note, too, and you've heard some of the speakers today say this, we are here by design. Choices were made for us to be here. I know that Dr. Nicole Turner-Lee and plenty of my other colleagues remember there was a period of time when people were, even though we have our friend who coined the term digital divide, and he talked about the rural digital divide and the urban digital divide back in the 90s, but people, then it changed over time. And people only talked about the digital divide as though it was only a rural issue.
That's right.
And then they decided they're going to equate, and they still do, equate rural to being white, when we know that there's plenty of black people and other people of color who live in rural communities, particularly when we're talking about the South. So it seems as though to me that they have that narrative because they're trying to disenfranchise us politically and economically. So when we are talking about making sure that all of our communities are connected, it is absolutely imperative, and it is something that we are still fighting for years after Larry Irving coined the term digital divide. And I hope that we're able to make progress, even in spite of this administration.
Wow. Clayton, Silicon Harlem focuses on increasing digital access in communities of color. How do you see the digital divide as a civil rights issue, and why is it closing the gap about more than just infrastructure?
Well, thank you for that, and hello, everybody. I'm up in Harlem, people. I mean, it's been a while since I've been down here, but anyway. What? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Let's get this done. I'm going to go a little bit more. I'm going to just, I'm going to actually, it's not just about DEI. It's just not, just about digital. It's really a few things. So I've created a new thing. You remember something called AEIOU? Mm-hmm. Remember that, right? AEIOU, right? So,
The vowels.
That's right. I can't hear nothing. But anyway, so A, access. That's not just for digital and all this stuff. Access needs to be everywhere. One of the things that Larry did work with our President Clinton would talk about all the time, there's no difference between people. But what is access and exposure. And that has an impact by digital and with the internet, right? But then and when we go to E, you go look at what? Equity. Huh? You got to, so far, stick with me here, right? Yeah. All right, so what's A?
Access.
E?
Equity.
Okay, so what we do know that oftentimes there are opportunities that are not equal. Mm-hmm. We've got to get that in the right situation, right? So we got to figure out how to make sure, and I have a couple of ideas, and I'll talk about that later, but certainly equity is important for everything. That's why I'm saying this is just not about internet. This is about a lot of things, and that's have an impact on a lot of communities. What? Oh, whoever that is, you get a dinner with somebody. So,
That's right.
And that is something that we do need to make sure that no one's being left out, right? And it's not just here or New York. This is across the entire world in a lot of places. People need to have access to exposure, obviously, and certainly we need to make sure that we're connecting as real people, not just looking through a phone or looking through a computer. We got to connect in a lot of ways, so inclusion is important. So, boy, if somebody can hit O. Opportunity, yes. Oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Oh my God. So this is how, when it comes to opportunity, right? That's how you become like, we can get people out of poverty, for example. People need an opportunity. People will learn. People will do good things. And so we got to continue that. So let me keep moving. So last one.
You.
The you.
That's all of you.
Unity. Oh, Lord. Yes. I love it. So that's what we have to be, right, for our communities. We got to unite. We got to come together. You know, we got to get this nonsense of hurting each other, right? We got to come together, work really hard, come together in a way that makes sure that people that are behind us will have great lives. That's what's going to happen. So the AEIOU is what I wanted to start. Certainly as it relates to what we're talking about, the DEI and the internet and all the issues that I am a person that actually helps people get the internet. I actually have a company that we actually are a provider. And I have focused primarily on tough areas, right? Projects, all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of that stuff. It turns out, same old people.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Amen. Tyrone, digital exclusion limits career opportunity for young people. How does the lack of access to technology affect their chances for a good job, and what can be done to ensure everyone has an equal opportunity?
What a wonderful question, and I'm glad to be here. 20-something years ago, when Tavis Smiley asked me to write The Covenant of Black America, and I wrote about the digital divide, we were really talking about a couple of things. We were talking about access, hardware, content, which was absolutely critical, infrastructure, and a few more things. But the reality was we had already lost the digital divide. We had lost it when the microprocessor was created and our community was fighting for civil rights, and we weren't there when all of these billions of dollars were being divided up. Recently, when Tavis and I released the new covenant with Black America, I focused on the work we're doing now, which is a game changer. That's called digital agency. That means for our community, we can move a little bit beyond the digital divide and begin looking at opportunities that the world has never seen. That is the decentralization of data. The people who own us, they have the hardware. They have all of our information. Imagine you having digital agency. The new currency of the future is your digital presence. And out of that is coming tons of businesses. For example, we have created a metaverse platform, STEMcityUSA.com. That means that anyone in the world can enter a metaverse and duplicate what we call a digital twin. So you have a disruption going on right now, Reverend, where our community at last can actually be at the front end of the technology rather than at the back end of the technology. I'll sound an alarm. Artificial intelligence is our friend. The metaverse is our friend. Blockchain is our friend. Okay? So if you understand what's about to happen and all of the jobs are being created and why the big guys are fighting over this, you have about 3 different things. Legacy companies, these older companies are going to have to bring up their hardware, software to deal with digital agencies, and they're going to have to be able to deal with bringing their equipment up the line to deal with AI. That's a ton of new businesses and skill sets for our community. Secondly, the disruptors, new people who are going to come in and disrupt the major companies using AI, using blockchain, using the metaverse. Huge, huge areas that are taking place. And then finally, being able to use these technologies to create new industries. For example, on our metaverse platform, you can go take an eye examination. You can go to Dr. Athel Morgan's web area on the page, take an eye examination, and use your insurance to be able to pay for it. What does that mean when we're able to do diabetic screening and all of these other stuff to transform our community? So finally, Reverend, let me say this. I have moved beyond simply talking about the importance, what Larry and I did with Black Family Technology Awareness Week all those years ago. I was actually depressed until blockchain came along, and I realized we can be in the game. My message to all of you, get in the game. You can get in the game. You can move beyond that consumer stuff. Before that, we couldn't do much. Now, nobody has it figured out. And what they're trying to do is lock us out. So there's nobody in here that can't be a Bill Gates. I am telling you, with this new technology, it's like 52 card Molly. You had all of these cards. We flipped them now. Now, get in there and help pick up those cards.
Deborah, from a policy standpoint, what happens socially and economically when certain communities are left out of the digital access? How can policymakers ensure that access to the internet is treated as a civil rights issue?
Well, that's an excellent question.
Pull the mic a little closer to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, just talk up a little.
No. How about now?
There you go.
She's going to make me kiss this thing. Now, listen, the thing is that the issue that I think we see now is that there is access. Okay, at some level there's access. About 95% of Americans can have some access to the internet. But the question is, do we adopt? Do we subscribe? And there's a subgroup of people that we just cannot convince that they should adopt and be subscribers to the internet. I mean, it's a small subset, but there is a subset. And what this means is 92% of jobs require some kind of digital skill. Okay, so, you know, there's no toll booth collector anymore. There's nobody, all this stuff is being automated. You know, you go to the grocery store, you're checking yourself out. Okay, so all the jobs that people used to be able to have, they are vanishing. And so you have got to have digital skills. And having access just on a telephone, which majority of African Americans and a lot of other people have, it's not sufficient for many reasons. You can't apply for a job too easily on your cell phone. The skills that you need, can you do Excel? Can you do all the software kind of things that are required now? You're not going to learn that so much on your cell phone. And that's what I think is inequitable. I think just access on a cell phone is inequitable. Right. You have got to have broadband at home. You can't just have to go to the library and stand in line and wait for a computer and hope that there's one's working. You got to have broadband at home. And so one thing that the former president was very good about doing, President Biden, was there was an act passed, the Broadband Equity Act. Okay. And money is supposed to be flowing to the states for broadband equity. And the states have kind of been in the blocks now waiting to get their money to build out, not just to deploy, but to build in areas that don't have access, but also to do things like have digital navigators. When you have people that are teaching you how to use the internet, how to use your computer, then you can engage fully in society. And so the point, I mean, right now, you know, things are strange in Washington, is my diplomatic way of saying it. Yeah. But the hope is that the money will come to the states, and the states are required to work with community organizations to make certain that people can have not just access, but they also have the ability and the skills to use the internet. And then also there are programs. We have found, it's inexplicable to me, that even when internet is free, there are people who will not subscribe, even when it's free. And even when we had the program that gave a $30 a month internet, still a large percentage of people would not subscribe. And so what we have to do, because our people need to hear it from us. That you, when these programs are here, you subscribe. You go, you take the classes, you get the $30 a month subsidy. Many companies offer broadband at lower rates, but can't get people to subscribe to it. So for me, I leave you with, yes, access is changing because if these networks are built out, it's going to be there. But the question is, you gotta go. If they build it, you gotta go. You have to adopt it. You have to subscribe.
Larry, last but not least, you coined the term digital divide nearly 3 decades ago. Since then, have we made real progress, or is the system barrier keep our community offline still as strong as ever?
So thank you. It's delighted to be here. We had Harlem in the house. For those of you all from Brooklyn or Queens, I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, Jamaica, Queens. So I'll make sure that we get all the boroughs. I can't say it about Staten Island, but the other Brooklyn and Queens are definitely here. When I started looking at digital divide, I started because of being a kid growing up in the housing projects in Brooklyn and remembering, and some of y'all are old enough to remember this, that brother next door didn't have a phone. They'd have to come to our house to use a phone. And then one of my cousins lost his phone because one of his friends was using long distance on his phone. And if you lost long distance, you lost the local phone. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 1 out of 4 black households in America did not have telephone service because of the cost. We're at a place right now where, yes, 95% of Americans have some sort of internet access, but a disproportionate number of us have only a cell phone as access. The last time I was here in New York speaking on the digital divide, I was at John Jay College, which is maybe 5 blocks from here, 6 blocks from here, just a little west of here. It's talking about Cooney. 500,000 students. We had young black men and women, our scholars, our future, who were doing their term papers on a cell phone, or they were staying at John Jay till midnight to do a term paper because they did not have broadband access at home. So yes, we have made progress, but nowhere near the progress we need to make. The other problem we have is we are always fighting the last war. Mm-hmm. We spent a lot of time here talking about the digital divide and equity and access. AI is changing all of that. I'm listening to brothers yesterday, literally yesterday, telling me how they were so proud because their child was learning coding. And I am happy that the brother was proud that the daughter was learning coding. But AI is making coding irrelevant because none of us are as good at coding as that computer is. Right. And the point I'm trying to make is, the old line, and I like to tell the story. I was in Australia some years ago, and I was in the supermarket with my wife, and I had a baseball cap on, and these Australians had never seen anything quite look like me, and they followed me around the supermarket, and finally I take my cap off, and they go, Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan. and my wife says, yeah, if you had a jump shot and $50 billion, you'd be Michael Jordan too. And the reason I raised Michael Jordan is because he played to where the ball is going to be. We're still talking about internet access when we got to be talking about AI. We got to talk about Bitcoin. We got to be talking about all of the changes that are going places. Because if we continue to fight last year's war, we're going to lose. One other thing, we've got to get our institutions on board. A lot of us learned the first time how to use the internet at our libraries. Libraries were incredible places to get access and to learn. Probably none of you all are aware that one of the assaults happening in Washington is on libraries. There are millions of people who use libraries right now, and IMLS, the Institute for Museum and Library Sciences, has just been zeroed out. So if you know somebody who goes to the library for internet access, they may be in hard times in a few years. The point I'm trying to make is we need to look at this almost like we need a strategy across the AEIOU works, but we need a strategy across all of these technologies and realize that the future is digital, but the present is digital. And if our children aren't ready for that digital future, when all the work that we've done for the last 30 years to get them ready, they're going to fall further and further behind.
That's right. Wow. All right, let's give them all a hand. Let's dive right into this because time is really limited today for us. So let's talk long-term impact, this digital exclusion. Dr. Lee, you talked about the digital exclusion, keeping people from accessing essential services like healthcare, and education, what do you think will happen long term if we don't make sure that everyone has an internet that they need?
That's right. So I promise, Reverend, I'll keep it short too because I want to respond to my colleagues. So when I talk about digital exclusion, and I think all of my colleagues have sort of mentioned this, right? When we talk about the digital divide, we normally are talking about something programmatic, giving kids laptops or finding ways to bring networks into communities. I think what we've heard from everybody that it's more than that. Because as we see more things go online, we cannot stay in a state where we're actually still analog in terms of how we actually do stuff. I know some of you may not know what I'm talking about, but if you had a record player and a VHS, you were analog, right? Today, things are different. What we have to do is we have to understand that the technology ecosystem across the board requires our participation, as folks have said, but I also want to respond to the artificial intelligence side of it, right? We have to use these technologies under the pretense that they are involving us in their design and deployment. So my mama always used to tell me, if you are not in the kitchen cooking the meal, you are on the menu and you are the subject. Most of us are the subjects of the technologies that we're engaged in. And so when I go back to the young woman that I write about in the book who I met who was battling breast cancer that had to go to a public library to interact with her doctor, someone asked me, had she been connected to a doctor that used artificial intelligence to actually do a scan of her breast, would they have caught it? And my response was no, because black women's breasts do not show up in clinical trials. That's why we're dying. My point is the technology, the solution for visibility in a space that has tried to exclude us is making sure, one, that the community understands what we're talking about is as significant as voting rights. You have to think about technology access as it relates to every part of the informational ecosystem that we're in. The second thing, we have to interrogate these new technologies in the same way. So I'm a huge crypto fan and blockchain fan. In fact, I'll tell you a sister to look up real quick. If you go to the city of Baltimore, they're using blockchain technology to actually record all of the deeds on the vacant housing and then allow people to use blockchain to start saving for a down payment. This sister, who is a solicitor general in Baltimore, is doing some amazing things. So look her up, Ebony Johnson. But my point is, but when we put our last dime into crypto and the market fails, we broke. My point is, we need to make sure that our vulnerabilities in the technological ecosystem are not about consumption, but they're about awareness and education. We have to have more of these conversations at the dinner table. We want to talk about everything else at the dinner table, but not talk about how our kids are using technology as consumers and not producers making the next big app. So my point is, we're only excluded when we lock our own door.
Wow, Clayton, how does digital exclusion impact economically, mobilely? What are the long-term effects on community when residents lack digital access?
I don't really understand that question, but
let me read it again.
Okay, no, I got it enough. One of the things that one of the things, and Larry else got me thinking a little bit. So AI, I just want, if you don't mind, I'm going to say that AI is really interesting. I've been around it for a long time. It's not new. So my thing, I want everybody to try to remember this. As much as I love technology, and I've been a technology person for a long time, I love technology, but I love people more. So keep that in mind, because it's starting to crazy a lot of people around AI. So how many of you are good coding at Python? Hello? Anybody hear me? There's only one. You cannot do AI without Python. Right. See, people don't think about that. Where the money is if you know how to do code. Right. The algorithms, all that kind of stuff is behind that. So I'm saying all that to say is there's a lot of opportunity here. If only one person and a big number of people right here, that's a great opportunity. There we go. Here we go.
So the question, did you get the question?
Say it one more time.
All right, let's do it again. So how does digital exclusion impact economic mobilize What are the long-term effects on a community when residents lack digital access?
I'm going to have Deborah Lathan also ask that answer to that question, but I'll say for Harlem, for example, where why would you have a computer if you don't have the internet, and why would you have the internet if you don't have a computer? So we had to figure that out a little bit with communities like that, where there's a lack going on with that. A lot of that because of what? Because of cost. And that is something now we can start to work very, very hard to make sure that cost comes down. As Larry talked about, you can't, even with school, just use your phone to get things done. That's impossible. And I've done it with a lot of kids that get behind because they only have phones to do that. But you can't code on a phone. So these are the reasons why we have to somehow or another bring this all together. But I do think it starts with us. It starts with us. I'm sorry, I missed that. Say that.
Yeah.
It's going to definitely happen.
So Dr. Valentin, families rely on internet for everything, from school to jobs, application. What does research tell us about how digital exclusion impact generational wealth and upward mobility?
Yeah, so over the last several months, through my role at Public Knowledge, we've been doing focus groups across the country, and we've teamed up with our friends at the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, as well as Unidos US, and we've gone to all different areas from rural Appalachia to New Mexico to Atlanta, Denver. We've been all over the place. And one thing that we're constantly hearing from people is that if they do not have a broadband connection, that determines what kind of job that they have. And it also determines what kind of business comes into the communities, right? So I remember several years ago when I was at the FCC, and someone from the city of New York came to visit with my boss, and I know that my colleagues are familiar with this research that the city did. But you can see the way that internet access is in Manhattan versus in Queens, right? And again, those are choices that are made, right? And so you think about the ways in which businesses are not going to want to come to an area where there's not reliable infrastructure. And so that's what we're hearing across urban America and rural America. And I also would just add on the points that my colleagues have made about kind of being not just passive consumers, but also producers. At Public Knowledge, we focus a lot on how to create healthy information ecosystems. And there's a lot of times, where folks are getting their news passively from social media, right? And there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation on social media, as you all know. But there needs to be more opportunities for us to create our own stories, to push back on the narratives that we're seeing out there. But in order to do that, you have to have access. But there's a lot of people making a lot of money off of podcasts and the content creation, and they're at the DNC and all the things. That needs to be us as well.
Yeah. Tyrone, what are the long-term effects of not having digital access for today's youth? How does it impact their ability to build skills, network, complete in the digital economy?
Excellent question, and it's a huge issue. I just want to pick up where my colleague left off, dealing with what we call data farms. In Baltimore, we just opened STEM City Baltimore in the Thurgood Marshall Amenity Center with over $12 million from the state of Maryland in order to do this. One of the things that we're doing is workforce training, where we're bringing in data farms in abandoned buildings, where a data farm is actually a hybrid. An AI data farm is actually a hybrid. Everything can't go in the cloud. You don't want everything in the cloud. So we can bring things from the cloud into servers that can power local areas. What do we do with that? We train kids on how to maintain the equipment. We train kids on how to deal with AI and do things in the metaverse. So that's one way of actively changing lives in a meaningful way in a meaningful time period. But Reverend, I do think, I don't know if everyone understands what a metaverse is. So real quickly, let me give you a quick definition. A metaverse is a platform. STEMCityUSA.com is a 2D metaverse. And if you go there, what you will have are these following pieces. One, digital agency. You control your agency. What that is your currency. Currently, we give our information away to Facebook and everyone else. Imagine if they had to buy our information because you can control it. Now, why does that happen? Because you build on a blockchain. Prior to now, the people who own the data were the people who own the hardware. The banks own all of your information. You don't own your financial information. So, only thing you could own is .com. With blockchain, you now are able to own all of your intellectual property. Once you're able to own digital assets, you can sell them. And therefore, you are creating a whole new world. Number 3, collaboration. And number 4, having access to connectivity all the time. Those are just 4 ways of how you look at a metaverse. So now we build this metaverse. At our company, what we've done is taken all of our magazines, Black Engineer, Hispanic Engineer, we've built what we call a large language model, where you can put all of this information. So if you want to hear about Larry, you can go in there and not only ask who is he, but you can actually predict. You can say, Colin AI, look at all of the material that Tyrone Taborn has written about Larry. What would he say about this particular issue today?
Hold on a second. Are you giving me attribution?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I still got to get my copyright.
We don't have your stuff. We have 50 years of the stuff we've created, which means we don't have to worry about people erasing our history in the future when you're able to use this kind of information. And so there is a lot of optimism that I have about this future of what we're doing right now.
Right. So, Deborah, why is it dangerous for us to ignore the digital divide?
Okay, first I'd like to say this, though, because we keep, and I'm going to answer that question, but we keep using the term being excluded, which is fair. But we come from a people who have always been excluded, and we have always prevailed. Okay, we have always won. We've always come back and made ourselves an integral part of this country. And now we are under attack again, okay, to be excluded. And so I guess what I'm saying is one of the greatest weapons we have is to get ourselves firmly involved in the internet, to do what Tyrone has talked about. Because, you know, we don't have, during the civil rights period, we had our own newspapers, you know, we had our own things, our own institutions, and now we don't particularly have those things anymore. But what we can do is we can recreate that through the use of the internet and through the use of the technologies that Tyrone has talked about. So why is it important? Because, you know, as I said, the jobs are going to be based upon your digital skills, okay? But we also, if you want to invent, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have got to have access to the internet. If you want to start a business, you have got to have access to the internet. And so we have to get our kids off the cell phones and onto real broadband platforms is what we have to do. That is critical to do anything that you're talking about, is they have to be on broadband platforms. You got to have broadband in your home in order to make this work.
Larry, I know you have to go. Based on your decades of researches, what are the most undermined consequences of digital, and that word again, exclusion,
Digital visibility.
Digital visibility, okay? What will happen if you don't take immediate action?
You can't participate in society, period. You cannot be a full American, can't be a full global citizen. You can't do anything you want to do. Are you an artist? Are you a musician? Are you an author? Are you a doctor? Are you a lawyer? Are you an accountant? No matter what you do for a living, this makes it better, and this makes it even more powerful. You know, while we're sitting here, Clayton is training people how to use digital tools. We have a brother here who can train people how to do Python. So I looked up in 2 seconds, what are the skills needed if you want to do in an AI economy? And in 3 seconds, I had a full disposition of what you can do. I don't know how many of you all have gone on ChatGPT or Apothic or Claude or Perplexity.ai or Gemini. Please do that. No matter what you do in your career, it's going to make you stronger, powerful. It's going to bring all of the wisdom of the universe at your fingertips in seconds. You simply cannot survive in a society without being digital literate. And for the folks who are here and who left their bags, when they come back, tell them to get on AI platforms and at least understand it. Because if you don't understand it, it's going to eat your lunch. You cannot be a full participant, and your children in particular need to be part of this revolution. One quick story, because I do have to leave, and I do talk a long time. 35 years ago, I went to HBCUs and said, you need to invest in connecting your schools to the internet. And at that time, they told me, well, your Department of Commerce, and we deal with the Department of Education, and we know what this internet thing is. We lost 5 to 7 to 10 years because our own leaders didn't see where it was going. That's right. I'm not a leader necessarily, but I am telling you, you need to understand AI. You need to make your life a internet life, because if you don't, the brother or sister who's not a brother or sister who's looking for your job, they're doing it.
So let's give them a hand. I am so sorry. We were just getting heated into this discussion, but because of time, that we have to move on, and this panel has already done an outstanding job, but I'm being told that in 30 seconds, we're going to have to exit the stage because there's another panel so we can get back on stage. So can you please give them another round with digital? Please give them another, please. Thank you. Yes, we got books, and if you want to talk to them, they are here. Thank you. They'll be outside in the hallway. Thank you.